Very warm welcome to all of you guys who are watching us live from YouTube. I'm your host, Titus Kirega, with Dr. Victor Ngani. And today is such a special day for chess in Kenya as we are watching a live battle on chess between Ben Nguku and Mehul Gohil, as you can see on our page. And we are so excited because this has been a match that has been discussed for quite a while. Very many people asking when will this match happen, but finally here it is. Unfortunately, we apologize for starting the live commentary quite late because we had some few glitches with the online platform. But so far, we are glad that we could have this match going on. So at the moment, as you can see on the screen, Ben Ngoku is playing black, while Mehul is playing white. Such a very interesting position. Not much has happened so far. We'll go through the game once more so that we see what's been going on while we were away. But so far, the game is still early. Just a few more moves have been played, like 12 moves, if not 13. Actually, 13 moves have been, actually 15, sorry. And quite an aggressive play by Black, I think, considering that Black should be the one defending mostly, but I can see some very aggressive knight on c5. And we'll have so many of these to discuss. So they're playing 4 rounds, so two rounds today, 2 more rounds tomorrow. A lot is on stake, and of course, bragging rights here have to be on stake more than even the money. So maybe I can just give Dr. Ngani just a moment to introduce himself as we move on.
Yes, thank you, Titus. And very warm welcome to everybody who's participating in the evening, just watching us on YouTube Live. It's a very interesting game today because Mehul Gohil, the current national, and Ben Nguku is the perennial number 2. The last 2 years he's finished second, but arguably one of the strongest players in Kenya, one of the strongest players Kenya has ever had. The things about Ben, his discipline is unparalleled and unmatched. Mehul Gohil has been putting in the effort. He has tons of way, and indeed, you can count on these 2 players to have prepared significantly for this game. The time control is 90. Titus, you want to take us through the time controls?
So they're playing just the classical time control, 90 minutes with some increment. And definitely that's enough time for us to know who's going to be the better winner here. So these 2 players in the Kenyan scene are not new players. They've been known for playing very well. For those who played Mehul, they already know he's the national champion, current actually, because we never had the national. He's actually the current and the reigning champion, right? And Ngoku was the second runners-up, actually the first runners-up for the national championship. So this is such a very tight match. I can imagine it's so hard to predict. I don't know if Ngani is willing to bet on any of the 2 players, but we shall find out as we move on. Maybe I don't know if it's just wise if you just go through a few of the moves so far. Maybe we can just start the game from the beginning. And the game started with d4. Mehul played d4. Quite a solid line. It's definitely d4 is a move where the player intends to have a quiet game, a more slow development. So Nguku responded with d5. Then Mehul played the normal Queen's Gambit. That's the c4. Quite a trending line at the moment if you've watched the movie Queen's Gambit. Then e6 was played.
Maybe at this juncture, it's important to just mention a couple of things because we have many chess players in who may not be at different levels. So it looks immediately as if White is giving up a free pawn on c4, but it's not entirely free. And this is the Queen's Gambit. What it does is immediately should Black take the pawn on c4, White can straight up go ahead with the Queen to a4, give a check, and then pick up the pawn. But more commonly, White is not interested in doing that right away. The key idea is that in chess, very early on, you want to control the center. And the center are the 4 squares in the middle of the board, e4, d4, e5, d5, principally because the person who controls that center tends to have capacity for more space. They can put their pieces there, and then a piece standing in the center can control a lot more of the game. And so often this pawn is given, white will recover it later, or sometimes gives that pawn off for an advantage, such as a faster attack, a better center control, more active pieces, better development, and very many games have gone very badly for black as a result of taking the pawn. However, accepting the gambit is also a very common plan where you can take the pawn, but give it back a short while later.
Yeah, very true, Dr. Ngani. Thank you very much for that insight. Actually, it's very important to understand the Queen's Gambit better and how and why the C4 pawn is given. Definitely, Nguku did not accept the gambit, meaning he did not capture the c4 pawn and went for the classical line where he played e6. After that, the knight went to b3. Nguku played knight to f6. Quite some pressure being set on the center. Nguku and Mehul went with knight to f3. Still development moves.
Titus, again for the team that may not be, for the seasoned chess players, all this make a lot of sense and everyone understands what's going on here.
Yeah.
But for someone who's probably learning chess, the young people back at home who hold the future of chess, you'll notice that white moved the knight, then the second knight, then on the other side, black moved the knight to f6, then the bishop to e6.
Mm-hmm.
You notice they're moving the pieces almost once.
True.
And at the same time, they're getting them away from the back rank. This is important. And the example I give is that if you have a war, and chess is a war between two armies, do you want to take out your strong guys into the fight to give a better chance? And the answer is yes. So what you want to do is to move the pieces, right now not doing much in the back rank, to get into battle. And this is what is called piece development. So repeatedly, you'll hear us talk about who is ahead in development, who has better piece activity. So development is simply getting your pieces out into the battle. At the same time, you want to minimize, give your pieces the best chance of squares to go to. For example, the knight sitting on c3 has about 8 squares it can go to. It can go to d5, b5, a4, a2, back to b1. It can go where the queen is standing, e4 and e2. Those are 8 squares, as opposed to if it had been moved to a3, it has fewer squares. And in this way, we say that knight has either more space or greater activity. Plus, moving towards the center, it's exerting more pressure on the center. Never forget the center in chess. The center is a really important part of chess. And you'll realize that both Ben and Mehul, who are very strong chess players, will be moving their pieces, touching them only once before they move all the pieces out into activity and perhaps even castle. Over to you, Titus.
Thank you very much. I really agree with you. Such a good insight on that. Very good discussion. Actually, like the fact that you mentioned the fact that new and players who are starting to play chess need to take note of the fact that you don't use your pieces so many times in the opening. And that's the stage where we are starting the game. That's what we are calling the opening stage. And at this point, if we continue the game like Dr. Ria has just noted, you'll notice that both players, because they're very good, they'll be playing their pieces at least once. If you've noted, the knight has only played once, and you see pawns trying to get some center, the knight's trying to coordinate with the pawns to control the center, and then you'll definitely see at some point castling happening. So let's just try to match up with the game and see if we can go up to the current position. So at the moment, Nguku had played bishop to e7. That's where I was. Still developmental moves, moving the bishop possibly to castle the king into that position. Mehul played bishop to f4. Still developmental, a very good diagonal for the bishop, attacking the c7 pawn, and also just creating a good bishop somewhere. Maybe another reason why maybe he may have played the bishop to f4 is so that the bishop is not blocked after he plays the pawn to e3. Maybe just because definitely the bishop on f1 is planning to develop. So let's see what happened after here. Nguku castled just like we predicted. Then white plays rook to c1. such an interesting move. Maybe Daktari can discuss about that move. I don't know. I would have thought E3 was to come next, but Rook to C1. Nice. Interesting. Possibly trying to put some pressure on the C file and maybe capture the
Yeah,
pawn.
and
Yes.
not only that, you see already there is a bishop attacking c7.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a rook coming to c1. So there's always looking at the full line. Right now that rook seems blocked, but then our pieces want to go to places where they're active, and rooks love open files. So it's very clear that at some point the pawn on c4 may pick on d5, and the pawn on d5 may pick on e4, opening that c line. When the c line is open, the rook is a very happy camper. And in addition to that, there's an indirect attack sitting right now around c7, and I can expect at some point black may end up playing c6 just to stop the knight from going to b5 or take advantage of closing off the rook. Yeah.
Very true. I agree. That's a very correct analysis. I agree with you, Daktari. So let's continue the game. After that, correct. So Nguku just played like what Daktari just predicted. C6. Definitely to stop that possible future attack on the c7 pawn. So just like I wanted Mehul to play, he did that. So he played e3, trying to give his light squared bishop some life, and also definitely to develop the bishop and possibly castle. Nguku played knight to d7. Development. That knight did not have a better square to move from, so I think d7 works for it. Nguku play. Mehul plays a3. Maybe he does not
Titus,
want.
may I just give a comment about the preceding knight move?
Yes.
And the key question is, you see, everyone is trying to develop their pieces.
Yes.
But the question is, where do you develop to? And that's something that must be answered. The natural square for the knight normally is c6.
Exactly.
But right now there's a pawn sitting on c6, which was put there primarily to stop the knight from going to b5, to support the pawn on d5, and also to blunt out the rook sitting on c1.
True.
Now, certain structures can happen here. One of those structures would be if white were to take, for example, on d5 and black picks back with the e pawn. That structure is called the Carlsbad structure, where black has 4 pawns on the queen side, white has 2, but then the 2 pawns can move up in something called a minority attack, which has been shown to be very, very effective over time. Secondly, the path for the knight, where is it going? When white has a very strong center, black has to plan to attack that center. And the routine breaks for this is either to play the move c5 or play the move e5. And therefore, the knight sitting on d7 strongly supports that break, one of those 2 breaks. Another important issue, and why black probably had to play c6 before playing the knight out, you realize that at any stage, the knight on c3 would have gone to b5, increasing pressure on the c7 square. The only defense that black had in that situation was to move the knight out to a6, sorry, so that it's defending the c7 square backwards. Unfortunately, that meant the knight can't move before b5 is prevented. So this is still part of theory. There are many games that have been played at this position, and I'm sure the players are very much within book.
I agree with you completely. And it's actually the only correct square to put the knight. Knight d7 really works best. I also agree with you. Putting the knight on a6 will have been quite detrimental on the development of the knight and even the activity of the knight. So let's just proceed with the move. So Mehul played a3, possibly trying to avoid the pin by the bishop. I think allowing the bishop to come to b4 will have had some bad consequences on the knight on c3, plus definitely that will have been followed by knight to e4 by black. So we can just proceed with the position. After that, black plays rook to e8. Also, maybe something, maybe Dr. Ngani can discuss that move. Would you see why that move makes sense? I think for me, I feel black is almost done with development. The only bishop that is feeling lonely is the light squared bishop, and it could be a problem for black most of this game. If you notice, most of white pawns are on the light squares, and in chess, when that happens, we say that the light squared bishop in this position would be a bad bishop. Maybe rook e8. Are you seeing possibilities of e5 by black? Or why would you think
Yeah.
rook to e8 is the move? Yeah.
Well, it's a move that is a bit cryptic for me, and I think what Black is suggesting is that he's planning to play e5 as a break instead of say c5. However, I would have prioritized activating the c8 bishop first.
I think so too.
I'd imagine that the move is still very much within the players know what they're doing.
Yeah.
A lot of this have been covered by theory. I was looking at the possibility of moves such as b6 and then the bishop coming out to b7 and perhaps
I
c5.
think so too. Yeah,
Rook
yeah.
coming to c8. Yeah.
True. I agree with you. So maybe rook e8, but let's see what happens. It's still too early to tell anything. So white captures the pawn. C takes d5, and now the question would be: is it time for white to capture the pawn? But I think reasonably why that capture makes sense. It seems it's time for the light squared bishop by white to develop. Usually in the queen's gambit, if black does not capture the pawn, for instance, if at this point white has just played bishop to d3, then he will have lost some tempo because now black will have captured immediately, and then the bishop will again have to capture c4. So white taking c times d5 is a clear indicator that now the right squared bishop by white is about to play. And now, if you notice at this point, the rook that Daktari had predicted is having a semi-open file. Depends on which pawn black will capture with at this point. If takes with the pawn on c6, then the rook will have an open file. But I doubt if Nguku is about to give Mehul a complete open file for the rook. So I suspect e times d5 may have been played, but let's see what happens. So I don't know, Doctor, you have something to say about the capture?
Well, I thought it's a bit premature. Again, I'm not very familiar with this particular now position we're looking at.
Okay.
But I would expect you maintain tension for quite some time.
All right.
And maintain flexibility. Yes, I know the idea is that black wants to avoid the situation where the bishop has to move twice. But it's not completely wrong. And it allows black to gain a move, half a move actually by capturing. Because now he can capture the c6 pawn, he can capture with the e6 pawn, he can capture the knight, though the knight captured seems least likely because of full center control.
True.
Yeah, so I'd be hesitant. I think such a capture actually almost equalizes for black.
Nice. But let's see what Nguku does. So Nguku goes with knight takes d5. Very interesting. Possibly he wants to give the other knight the square this knight has just captured with. So maybe he wants to capture with the knight. Then I think I would actually at this point also half agree with him. Definitely taking with the e6 pawn is what I will have played myself because I want to give my light squared bishop some life. But at this point, I don't know if white wants to capture. I don't think it's a good idea for Mehul to even worry about the knight. Possibly just remove the bishop on f4 because you don't want to spoil your pawn structure. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that's the idea actually, because the knight on d5 is gaining a tempo on the bishop on f4.
True.
So I think that's why Nguku has opted to capture the knight. And of course, if the white captures the knight, then we are back to the cusp-and pawn structure. But now with black having a bit more space. One of the key principles in chess strategy is if you have less space, and right now you can see that black has less space, then what you want to do is to exchange off some pieces. When you do that, then you have some room for your pieces to maneuver. And even if you don't have so much space, then it doesn't matter because there are no pieces to move there. The downside, however, is that at some point, black will be able to play the move e4, e5, and white, plays e5, and that gives him full center control. And it's hard to imagine actually see black being a little bit worse as a result of the knight capture. Imagine playing a move like bishop to g3, and then following that up with the move e4, and that should more or less do it. Except, as you've already said, at this juncture, it's very hard for white to stop black from playing the move c5 or e5. Black has significant room for those moves already.
True. I agree with you. So let's see what happens. So knight after knight d5. Oh, I thought removing the bishop on f4 was the move and putting it at maybe g3.
What did he do?
White plays bishop c4. Interesting move by white. I don't know if it's time for black to take advantage and maybe spoil a pawn structure for white. I don't even understand
Of
why.
course, I wouldn't think twice about it. First of all, it's a bishop pair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you think Mehul played bishop c4? I really don't see much about the move, because even the diagonal he's trying to target looks quite locked up for the bishop. Maybe bishop d3 was better. But anyway, let's see.
I only think of one thing actually.
Yeah.
Time, because you see, by moving the bishop, you're spending time.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis moving the f4 bishop, the dark squared bishop. It's spending time. But moving your light squared bishop saves you time. However, I still have my serious reservations because the resulting pawn structure gives white an isolated pawn on d4.
Yes.
A double pawns on the f square, and what are called three-pawn islands. Exactly. A pawn island is a situation where the pawns don't have neighboring pawns on the neighboring file, so you have the 2 pawns on the A and B file, the isolated pawn on the D file, and then your 4 pawns fully on the F, G, and H files.
Yes.
Now these are really, they look like simple things in chess, but in reality these are really big differences, and it can mean the difference between a win and a loss. For sure, at this juncture, the bishops are restrained, black's bishops are restrained.
True.
But they could come to life by simple moves like c5, b3, bishop comes along diagonal, and suddenly white can find himself in a little bit of trouble.
Again, I feel white should not allow black to take the f4 bishop. It's really strong. I think it was so good because it is not easy to oppose it at this point. Just putting it on g3 would have given it way much longer life, considering that black at this point has a problem giving away the d6 square. If you notice, the d6 square is the natural position for the natural square to put the dark squared bishop for black, but now that black is giving away the bishop on f4, black is about to have some very easy time bringing back now the light squared bishop, developing the other dark squared bishop. It will be just a lot of tempo for black, but let's see what happens. So I expect Nguku to take the bishop on f4, but let's see. Correct. So bishop
100%, yeah.
Yeah, that's so obvious for me too. So I think knight takes the f4 bishop. Now, like you're just saying, 3 pawn islands are double pawns and 1 isolated pawn. Such a bad thing to have at this point. Considering he's not castled, so he will lose some few tempos because of that one. I think it's kind of like a minor error for me. I don't know if it has any tactical plans, but let's see what happens. So knight takes the bishop. Of course, white has to take the knight. And now if you look at the position, just like what we said, what will black do at this point? And now Nguku plays c5. I don't know.
I'm not very happy with the c5
I'm
move,
also
actually.
not happy. Why correct the isolated pawn?
My question exactly, but well, I'm not sure why, but you know, that really sort of equalizes. So it becomes almost an equal position immediately.
Yeah. That move feels wrong. I don't know. Maybe even just playing the other bishop to d6, just having a direct attack on the f4 pawn. All right.
You know, it's well, okay. They know best, actually. Maybe they've gone through this. Yes. The other thing is that we are still at around move 11 of the game. And at move 11, I'm almost certain these players are in book. These are the lines that they live by. So at the end of the game, we could ask them, and they'll probably tell us this is what they've been paying attention to.
I think I will, if I try to understand black better, I suppose he wants to have his bishop on the a7 g1 diagonal. Possibly he expects white to capture and put the bishop on c5, and possibly put it there as long as he can for the game. But I think he's giving back the center with that, and unfortunately he's also correcting this isolated pawn, which was going to be a big problem for white. I expect, I don't know if white will take immediately or what, or maybe push even forward, because even it's still, you can still push the pawn. So at this point,
Yeah.
mhm,
Well, we always talk about the selected pawns, but it's not full weaknesses.
yeah,
Normally, the selected pawns have their own trumps. First, they control the center, and right now you can see one of the advantages of having taken, giving up the bishop on f4
yeah,
is that black has watertight control over the square d5, meaning
yeah,
b5, sorry, e5 is completely out, will never happen.
yes,
But then, so exchanging some of these pawns has its advantage. As you said, white can push forward.
yes,
But you always have to keep an eye out for what is called pawn structure.
yes,
And pawn structures make a huge difference. If
true,
white were to push the pawn now to d5, I would imagine black has room to change, exchange that,
yeah,
and suddenly black has a pawn majority. Three
true,
pawns on the queen side versus two.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yes, white has a pawn majority,
mhm,
but the pawns on f are what they're doubled, meaning you cannot force a passed pawn.
true,
So an immediate strategy, thinking from this stage already towards the end game,
mhm,
is to exchange off most of the pieces,
yes,
allow, create a pass pawn on the queen side, and
mhm,
basically win. Sounds too simplistic, but when you
actually,
listen to the grandmasters talking,
yeah,
this is all there is, and it's a very, very interesting issue. So I don't think pushing on d5 is possible.
yeah, it's
It would
not such a
create an
good idea.
imbalance that favors white.
I also
Now, if you
think,
go back, Titus, to your point about the bishop that was on f4, you are
yes,
absolutely right.
mhm,
While the bishop still sitting on on g3 now,
mhm,
then c5 would not be possible because the knight would then
exactly,
come straight into b5.
true,
But already there's a fork sitting at b7, at c7. So this is this question of the bishop exchange really may come back to haunt Mehul. I thought he had a very good position after bishop to g3, and they may have wasted that opportunity.
very true. I agree with you. So I also agree with you. Pushing d5 could be very detrimental, because considering that even uh, white has not castled and the rook is on a8, it could even bring some tactical ideas for black.
Mhm.
But let's see what happens. So Mehul definitely castles at this point, with the idea of possibly pushing, because now I think after castling, pushing could be an idea. I don't know if it's refutable if you push at this point after castling. If black does not capture,
Pushing the d5 pawn.
yes,
No, I think d5 push should never happen. This is my view is because the
mhm,
moment you push, then white can always capture the pawn and
yeah.
allows a favorable pawn structure change. The pawn structure will
Oh
have
yeah, yeah. You have three
queens,
against two.
majority, 3 against 2,
I
and of
agree.
course, whereas white has 4 against 3 on the king side,
Mhm.
those 4 can never force a passed pawn. So generally, it's a long-lasting advantage for black if such a structure is actually, I think it's Philido who said a long time ago that pawns are the soul of chess.
True.
And many times we don't pay attention to that. And if we begin to do that, our chess just improves. You see long term what's going to happen, what's going to change. And the pawns form the infrastructure
Hmm.
around which the pieces move. So understanding those structures is a really big component towards chess mastery.
I actually agree with you, because fine, if I push the pawn, I could have a good knight at the center. But again, the long-term effect could be bad if those three pawn majorities on the queen side ever create a passed pawn. It's gonna be an issue in the end
Yeah.
game. I agree. I agree. So at this point, white castles. Let's see what black does. And black plays a6. A6 has been played. So is black trying to force white to capture?
Now.
Because definitely, if white does not capture the pawn on c5, then you expect some expansion on the queen side by black. So you expect a move like b5, followed by c3, actually by c4, and the bishop on the white square by white will not be so happy for those few pushes. But I don't know if it's definitely that looks like the plan. A6 is trying to prepare for b5, and it's also trying to force white to capture the pawn on c5, or maybe push. But I think the whole game has changed from what we started by analyzing, because initially we felt uh, the deep one was isolated. It was not a good idea to even allow an exchange on that pawn just put pressure on it. In fact, it would have been an easier game for black just trying to put pressure on the center because the pawn would have crumbled. But I don't know what black is trying to achieve at this point, possibly trying to just get more space on the queen side and maybe put the bishop, the light squared bishop on b7. So at this point, that seems like the plan. I don't know if you have an idea of. Do you think that's
yeah? I think the bishop's moves are limited.
Mhm.
One option is to move the bishop to d7 and then to c6, which I think is what Ben is planning. The alternative is to move the b pawn, the b7 pawn, to put the bishop in the long diagonal. So the long diagonal, I think you can access both ways, but it's generally safer to have the bishop sitting on c6, which seems to be a major advantage. And Titus, we can hear your call in the background. Yeah, sorry about that. So the bishop going to g7, d7, and then coming to c6 is probably one of the things that black will be considering. But activating that bishop, once black activates that, then I think there's really not much that white can count towards in terms of advantage. Perhaps the only thing that would remain in this position is for white to move the knight to e5, which is a very nice outpost, and therefore restrict the bishop's idea of moving up to the c6 square. No issue. The other, maybe what we can do, because I'll wait for you to just move the whole team. The alternatives that probably black has is to, I think the idea of moving the knight to the bishop to d7, then c6, basically will fail to knight to e5. And as a result of that, black has one reasonable option, and that is play the move, say, b5, and bring the bishop to the long diagonal through the b7 square. But of course, there's a downside. When you move your pawns ahead, they become targets. And at some point, you can expect a bit more activity for white as a result of those pawn moves. There's some squares left behind. So it's an interesting direction. Let's see how the play pans out. We'll let you Titus to give us that idea. Now, a question my 9-year-old daughter asks me is, how do you know who is better? And a couple of things we want to begin to look at in a position such as this. The first is material. You basically look at the pieces on the board and do a basic count, approximately a pawn being 1, a bishop and a knight being 3, approximately, because that's a really big debate. The rook being 5, the queen being 9. Of course, you can see I'm working from home. There is a young lady who's on my case here. Bring me a banana. Thank you, Tello. But I'm on a meeting. Please allow me. It's really important. Okay. So you just do a basic count and see. So in this situation, the material is generally equal, where we have 3 minor pieces each, 2 rooks, a queen and a king, and we have 6 pawns on either side. The second thing you want to look at is the pawn structure. And immediately in this particular position, you can see both parties have 2 pawn islands, 2 pawns on either side. But then black has well-aligned pawns standing on each file, and white has doubled pawns on the F file. Now, this could be an issue at some point, and the big issue about double pawns is the square in front, where someone can basically attack it and reduce the mobility of your pieces. Sure. But the advantage is that white has a semi-open file on the E file, which they can bring their rook to, and black can't have a similar advantage. Yes. You also want to look at the piece activity. And in fact, before that, look at development. Development is how far the pieces are off the back. In this position, it's very, very clear that white is ahead in development by far. The knights are out, the rooks are joined, he's castled, and all he needs to do is to bring the rook on F1 to an open file to finish that development. And of course, by the move queen to C2, you can imagine the F rook is coming to D1 and black is just smiling. Then the piece activity, which squares a piece can go to. And right now, you can see the f3 knight can go to e5. The bishop on c4 has tremendous space. The knight on c3 is well placed. It can move to e4. It can move to a4 and b6. It can move to g5 through e4. It can move to e2, g3, and h5. The queen is very active on long diagonal. So clearly, the activity for white is at a different level. Black is behind development because of the bishop on c8, and the rook are not joined. The queen is in the home square, and it tells you that you want to be a little bit careful. As a result of this, you may actually look back at white's decision to keep the bishop sitting on f4 as a wise decision, because it allows him to be ahead, to have this lead development that we've spoken about. Other things I've not mentioned, the king's safety. Both kings are fairly safe. Then, of course, center control. You could say that the piece activity for white compensates a little bit for this, and then the interplay between the minor pieces, the bishops and the knights. And right now, black has a bishop pair, and white has two knights. And if the bishop on c8 could gain activity, then this game could take a different picture. But of course, there are ways to restrict that, and also always room to exchange of one of the bishops at some point to minimize that advantage.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ngani. That's some good insights. Also, give me some time to sort out my glitchy video. I hope it's fine now. Maybe we can just proceed with the position and see what's going on. We're on move 12 after a6 by black. Let's see how white is going to respond. And Mehul finally decides to capture. D takes c5. At this point, the question we want to ask ourselves is, will black
Titus, this working from home is such an issue. Allow me to just get my small girl here to understand that I'm on a video call.
No worries. So I'll just proceed. So at this point, the question we are asking ourselves is, will the pawn be captured by the knight or by the bishop? Possibly there's both the advantages of both.
And it's a video call.
Just a moment, I'm also just sorting something. Seems to be things I need to sort out. Okay. Ngani, today seems to be a true Saturday. Working from home is not a Saturday.
I'm telling you, allow me to.
Nonetheless, let me just proceed with my analysis.
Apologies. Yeah.
We apologize to our viewers. This is part of live streaming. You cannot have everything pictured out. But anyway, let me just proceed with my analysis. Ngani will catch up with me as I proceed. So, in the position we are at the moment, Mehul has finally subdued to the pressure. He's decided to capture after Nguku decided to extend that pawn on d4. And the real question here is, do you take with the bishop to get a good diagonal with the bishop, or do you take with the knight? Because taking with the knight could even lead to queen exchanges. And I think exchanging the queens at this point might lead to a very drawish position, and it might even accelerate the game into the endgame. I honestly can't tell which is the best move at this point. I feel taking with the knight will give the knight definitely some space, maybe some activity, but not so long standing. So if I was to play black at this point, I think I would have captured the bishop and possibly get a good diagonal attack on the f2 pawn, and maybe even hide my bishop back at a7 at some point, just to keep it safe, considering the bishop will be unopposed. It's the only dark squared bishop on the board. And like Ngani may have mentioned a few minutes ago, having the bishop pair could lead to an imbalanced position. Let's see what happens into the next move. Definitely, he actually captured the knight. I thought the bishop was okay, and at this point, it leads me to so many questions. Will white exchange the queens? Does white want to go to the end game? Does he want a sharp game where both queens on the board? So definitely removing the queens might lead to a very, it's more like it's a more passive way of playing this line. It depends also on what he may have analyzed and see if having the queens off the board might give him any edge. But knight takes c5 definitely has some ideas, but I'm not seeing the knight having any effect on white's position because most of the light squares that the knight is attacking us are protected. If you look at the square like a4, it's well stopped by the knight on c3. The queen on d1 is also stopping any possible moves by the knight to d3. And maybe this is just one way of seeing black trying to open up the bishop on c8 because now the knight was also stopping the bishop from developing. But personally, I feel knight takes c5. Personally, don't feel like it's what I would have played. I'm not seeing so much tactical moves by the move. But I guess it's time we analyze what happens after that. So will white capture the queen? Let's see what happens. So white decides to play queen c2. So I think Mehul has decided to keep the queen, and that's why he does not want to put it on the way. And maybe he's foreseeing a scenario where the exchanging of queens might lead to some slow endgame, considering black has a pair of bishops. And I think maybe that's why black was giving up that possibility of exchanging because he's seeing a scenario where the bishops could be menaces in the endgame. So queen plays to c2, and of course it also allows this other rook on f1 to get the open file on d1, and that could lead to a very good game for white if that happens, and it seems like an immediate move, I think. So what will black do at this point? So black plays b5, attacking the bishop on c4, of course also allowing a square for the light squared bishop to go to b7. So bishop to b7 seems like the next move by black. Definitely after white removes the bishop from the attack by the pawn. So at least we can now see that black is also concerned with completing development, and I think that's where most young players go wrong. We usually concentrate playing one piece and forgetting pieces that have not developed. If you want to get full potential of your pieces, it works best if you develop all of them. And I'm seeing a very good square coming up for the bishop that we thought had not developed to be very nice. So if the bishop goes to b7 by black, it's going to have a very good diagonal attacking the king's castling position for white. And definitely I'm also seeing the other dark squared bishop later coming into the game and creating a lot of problems for white. So I'm starting to see the move b5 becoming very aggressive. It's a very aggressive move by black. I think Nguku is now going for Mehul, and I feel maybe even exchanging queens will have still made black have some good positions. But let's see where we put the bishop. So where do you put the bishop that has been attacked? Do you put it on a2? Definitely putting it on b3 might not be such a good idea. I feel if you put on b3, just the knight takes the bishop, and now black has a complete bishop pair with no position, and that could be a problem in this position, considering it's not locked up, because bishop pairs work best when the position is open, and I think at this point the knights will have a problem dealing with those bishops, considering the game is not locked up. Knights work best when the position is closed. So let's see what happens. There's a high possibility that white might play the bishop to a2, then relocate it to b1, and maybe just have that bishop relocate to a better diagonal. Putting the bishop to c3 might also not be such a good idea, but let's see what happens. Maybe bishop a2 will be a good idea, then later relocate to b1. But anyway, let's see. So bishop plays to a2 just like I predicted, of course with ideas of b1 at some point, but I'm seeing a scenario where after black plays bishop to b7, the queen on c2 will later be attacked by the bishop on e4, considering that, of course, at this point, black wants to retain the bishop there. Anyway, let's see. So bishop plays to b7. Ngani, are you back?
Yes, I am actually. But go ahead. Just go ahead.
Yeah. So I think bishop plays to b7 is the next move. Maybe you can just give your insights. I also deal with this young man here. Throwing things at my setup.
Maybe you can move us 2 steps forward, because I was just looking at the moves that were played by Ben.
Yes.
And suddenly I thought black was better in just a few moves because of the bishops. But then he's chosen a plan that is very conservative. Yes. Maybe if you make the 2 moves that he has played, bishop and knight e5, bishop d6, and then rook d1 and queen e7, so I can have a bit of a chat around those moves.
So you want us to go to the current position? So we are now in the current position. You're on the last move. You want it to be rook to d1.
Rook to d1, that's correct. Or in fact, we can just go back 1 step before rook to d1, and at the point where bishop d6, yes. Now, bishop d6, I think
just a moment.
Black has wasted Black has wasted a terrific opportunity here, because one of the things that is unique about black that white doesn't have is a dark squared bishop. So in a nutshell, it's easy to look at the pieces, but we often forget to see the spaces. And the dark squares on white's camp are particularly challenged right now. If you were to look at, say, for example, the diagonal starting from a7 to g1, where the king is sitting, that diagonal is super sumptuous. There is no chance whatsoever that black will ever be opposed along that diagonal. So I would think about putting my queen, say, on b6 and my bishop on c5, and suddenly that diagonal is absolutely under pressure. Secondly, with the bishop having moved down to a7, the square e4 is now almost fully under black's control. And it's difficult for white to control that square by moving the pawn to f3, because f3 further opens that long diagonal spoken about. So the dark squares, I would think about a plan that brings the black queen to b6 and brings the dark squared bishop for black to c5, and perhaps the knight coming to e4 and so on. So in such a position, another thing that strikes you is that the queen is sitting on c2. That's an open on a8 to c8, and immediately threats begin to emerge, things like knight to a4, knight to e4, and suddenly there's a really big possibility that you could end up creating an isolated pawn sitting on c3 just by a few moves. And it's instructive, and I think when you analyze this game later, that we'll find a move such as rook to c8 instead of bishop to d6 would have been a very strong move. And I would imagine that after rook to c8, white would play rook to d1, and white would follow up. Black would follow up with either queen to b6 or queen to c7. It's a really, really instructive direction. This one, yeah.
Yeah. Ngani, thank you very much for that insight. Sorry for the viewers, I had to deal with my young man here. He was giving me cake, and of course throwing things to my setup. But anyway, it's part of doing things from home. So I hope so far you're enjoying the game like we are. Maybe we can just keep to pace and see if we can reach to where the game is. We're actually very close to where the position is at the moment. So after bishop to d6 by black, an interesting, very strong move by white was played. Rook from f1 moves to d1, pinning the bishop on d6. And of course, at this point, no way black will ignore that kind of an attack. So I expect maybe a move like queen to c7. I don't know, Ngani, what do you think? Queen to c7? Or maybe queen to b6?
I would have preferred a move. Right now, there's a serious threat in that position.
There's a very serious
and that threat, not the threat the white, there's a threat, not the threat on the d file, but white is threatening to play the move b4. And when b4 is played, the knight that looks to be strong controlling e4 will have to move either to a4, e4 will be out of question, and of course d7 doesn't add any value. So immediately, I would think of pinning the knight on c3 immediately by playing a move such as rook to c8, so that in the event of b4, I can move my knight comfortably to either the e4 or the a4 square. And actually, by moving my rook to c8, I just put a stop to the move b4 immediately. On the next move, of course, white can still move his queen out of the line where the d rook is standing. But there's a bigger priority right now, not the pin. The bigger priority right now is to stop the move b4, because that's coming in short order.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, because even if if you play rook to c8, for instance, and black responds with a move like queen to d2, maybe double attacking on the bishop, you can just go ahead and capture the knight, right? They capture the knight on
yes,
bring the
knight
bishop.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, actually,
that's very true. Yeah,
I agree with you. That's perfect. Let's see what happens here. So Nguku is not interested in the queen. Maybe he's afraid of the queens like me. So he played queen to e7. And he's also foreseeing a scenario where the knight on c5 will be under a lot of pressure after b4 is played. And as you can see, that doubling up of the queen and the rook on c5 will have been a bad threat if the queen had moved maybe to c7.
If you played chess for a very long time, and I think this is why black played the move bishop d6 in the previous move, preparing to move the queen to e7 in response to the rook coming to d1. But then, if you ask yourself, what exactly is the queen doing on e7, and what is its prospects? Immediately when you ask that question, you realize, okay, maybe it was better to think of going the other side, and therefore this whole plan of bishop d6, queen e7 may not have actually it may have given black a breathing space after black had made some mistakes earlier on in the game. So I'd really white had made some mistakes earlier in the games. I really feel that white will look back at this move with regret. This is my honest opinion. But let's see how it plays out.
I agree. And it still brings me back a bit to how the knight got to c5. I think the reason knight going to c5 was not working with me is because if you look at the long-term prospect, if he had captured the pawn on c5 with the bishop, you can imagine the position we're having right now with two bishops both attacking the king's castling position, because you'd have bishop on c5, you'd have the other bishop on d7, and even if the knight would have been on d7, he can still relocate to f6 and still come back into the game. So I think at some point, Nguku, after analyzing the game, he'll realize maybe bishop to c5 was better capturing the pawn than the knight captured on c5. Because at this point, I don't see much of what the knight is doing there. It's gonna be chased away and still go back into the square we are saying at d7. So I don't know. Let's see how this turns out. So after queen to e7, yes, just like you guessed, b4 has been played. And the knight has to move.
And you can see black has a problem immediately. If you go to a4, knight picks on a4, and that's basically more or less like giving a pawn. If you go to e4, e4 is impossible.
True.
And going to d4 is another issue altogether. So already, it's small moves like this that we need to pay attention to. Now let's take this one step back. Had in this position, instead of queen to e7, black had played rook to c8. Immediately, b4 would be a blunder, because then the knight would be pinned, and it's just a serious set of problems.
I really agree with you. Rook c8 is really aggressive.
I don't know what these are the things called finesses, but really, it's one of those things that we want to begin to pay attention to as chess players.
So I think after that move, Nguku's foresaw a scenario where he'll have two pieces, because of course he's planning to put the knight on d7. It wouldn't work best now, so he decides to capture the knight on e5 with the bishop. leaving
Yeah,
the
and
first
whatever we are referring to as an advantage for black has basically
it's now
dissolved.
gone. True.
Yes, the double pawns have been corrected. All that is left is a very strong center for
white.
Black. So white has more space. Black no longer has a bishop pair.
And the knight
there
is
are
about to
sumptuous squares for the knight. Yes, the knight is about to go to the knight has been undeveloped. There's a square sitting
going to d7.
Exactly.
Wow.
So this is a bit complicated. And I'm looking at the next move that Mehul has played already. He's played a bishop to b1, creating a battery. Of course, the threat is checkmate on f7. I don't expect Nguku to fall for that.
True.
But then at the same time, there's an attack on the pawn on e5, and one of the things that you really want to avoid doing in chess is to move your f pawn. The natural instinct by most players is to defend the pawn using the move f4.
Oh yeah.
But the masters rarely do that. So I'd imagine here you need to play a move like queen to e2, maintaining the integrity of your pawns. Because if you make a move like f4, it's just weakening the long diagonal, that diagonal between a7 and g1. And there have been very many disasters. So the current guideline around the move f4, f5, move that pawn only when it's decisive, when you're winning something. If you're not winning something, hold on, keep that pawn back home.
True. So I think Nguku has just neutralized the threat with g6. And he still has some attack on the e5 pawn. And I see Mehul has immediately played f4, which is like the most reasonable.
It's a move I highly... that's the move I'm saying you really shouldn't play that move. Because unless it's a weakening move, at some point, two things happen. You can see the bishop is sitting on b7, meaning that diagonal can never be blunted with the move f3. That's the first one.
True.
But more importantly, the dark squares around the white king are now open. So you've opened that diagonal from a7, b6, c5, d4, e3, f2, and where the king is standing. So already there are some tactical things that will begin to rear their heads. Of course, I know that white is thinking of playing the knight to e4 and perhaps to f6. Looks very juicy, but
or even to d6.
I think he's overlooked the long-term strategy.
Actually, the knight to d6, d6 is even more painful, I think. Having the knight on d6. Yeah.
Except for these taters, there's a very good chance that when the knight lands on e4, it's going to be knocked off.
Actually, knight e4 is, wow, it's forcing the bishop to exchange.
True. But then the question is, what are the prospects? So you'll have a situation where after that exchange, you'll have the light squared bishop versus the knight. And the question is, which piece is going to be better in that situation?
I think
I'm not sure that the bishop... what is the reason?
I think the bishop is going to be okay. Considering that now, say for point, so knight, let's say knight e4, bishop takes, of course, queen takes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think giving up the knight is not a good idea.
Okay, before moving the knight there, of course, there's a move coming right away, I'd imagine, rook to c8. That's a first move.
Yeah, that's
either rook, maybe in fact
the rook on a, right? So the rook on a to c8.
Most likely, though there is also an argument for moving the rook on e, just because of the pawn sitting on a6, and also the possibility of the lever, which is a5, though a5 is not possible at this juncture. So there are many things to consider here. The first is, are you planning at any point to play the move a5? Remember what I said about the move b5. It leaves behind the a pawn. And normally, if white could get his knight to c5, then that knight becomes very hard to deal with. And it will be attacking the pawn that will be sitting back on a6. And so both parties have to be very, very careful. But the care being taken here is not for immediate tactical issues, but for strategic considerations that are either long-term. There is no way black should allow the white knight to land on either d6 or c5. That kind of move would be counter.
That would be painful if this knight was to get even to f6, because it will even lead to sacks of rook takes rook takes d7, and even fork on f6 if the knight was allowed to go to e4.
Yeah.
So let's see what Nguku will play, but I agree with you. Maybe the rook on e can go to c8, because you want prospects of maybe pushing to a5 later, so you don't want to remove the knight, the rook on a or on a8, and push it to c8. So there are possibilities of a5. I think at this point, black might need to get some counter by attacking on the queen side, because now it seems like the king side is a bit locked, and if white wants anything on the king, he has to sack a piece. So maybe, because I actually agree with you, f4 is weakening the king's position for white, because I'm not seeing any
Yeah, and
play.
the question is to decide. Jeremy Silman is a renowned author of chess literature.
Yes.
And he has what he calls determining the side to play on. And that is based on a couple of things.
Yes.
And just as I'm saying that, I see that rook to c8 has been played. So you should determine which side of this board you want to play on. Is it on the king side?
Yes.
Is it in the center, or is it on the queen side? Yes. And what side to play on depends on what you have. You should play on the side where you have an advantage or the potential to create an advantage. And yes, we all like to attack the king, but if you look at this situation, the only disadvantage that black has on the king side is that he has very weak dark squares around his king. The square f6, the square h6, but that is it. What can attack those squares? Yes, long term, you can see the possibility maybe that the rooks could go to the h file, but that's a very long process that takes time. And it's more likely that white has an advantage in the center, and that center is because of his advanced protected pawn in the b5. He has definitely more space. He has his rooks on those two open files. Sure. He has a centrally placed knight. He has a very strong bishop, supporting those squares. And so white may want to consider playing along the center, especially along the d file and maybe even the c file. And you create a plan around those two ideas. The queen side, of course, looks fairly equal. As for black, he's still very restrained. His knight has no future right now, except that perhaps to go to b6 and c4, which is a potentially strong move as well. So it's not easy to, attack a king at this time. The only king I would say that is a bit airy is the white king, because of the diagonal that has been opened, and also because there's a very strong bishop pointing at the g2 square. So let's see how this plays out. I would think for black, knight to b6, knight to e4 at some point. And again, there's a very nice yummy pawn sitting on a3 that's very hard to protect because it's sitting on a dark square.
Thank you very much. So Nguku has just played rook to a8, the rook from a to c8.
C8,
and,
yes.
Yeah, so Mehul still on it, possibly thinking of removing the queen from the pin first. I don't know if that's the thing. And then, of course, if you realize the light squared bishop for white is not so strong at this point, and your argument is right. So the light, the knight at this point for the black knight could just be an equalizer for black if white was to.
Yeah,
if actually black was.
I would strongly recommend at this juncture for white to play the move queen f2, and this is, it looks. Why on earth did you play a queen to f2? Number one, you're getting off that pin you're speaking about, Titus.
Yes.
But most importantly, when you look at the black knight, it's going to b6, and it's going to c4. That's its path. And so the moment you play the queen to f2, now suddenly
the knight is lacking black has that maneuver. True.
He can't really move to b6 comfortably. And if you were to play a move such as rook to c6 to prepare that move, then suddenly the bishop can come back to the e4 square, and that bishop would then attack the rook. In fact, I'd move to queen to f2 either way.
Immediately. Actually,
exchange of that bishop by playing my next move being a bishop to e4, and then my knight can come to e4 unopposed. Wow. So a very straightforward plan. And if the knight lands on e4, and it can't be taken, then I can dare say that black is in trouble.
I agree. I feel like black is in trouble too. Such a hard position for black. I think after queen f2, the moves for black are not obvious.
That is true. And Titus, another thing we are overlooking that's very simple is basically rook to d6, then rook to d1. And what does black do? So this is an important lesson on space and piece activity. So it's very clear that black has less space and it's not so easy. And you can see the queen sitting on e7, and it's been sitting on c3. Moves like f would never have been possible. Of course, f4 itself is not a very good move, to be honest. But then they compare the activity of the queen on e7 versus the activity of such a queen sitting on b7, and immediately you can tell this queen is playing zero role. It's doing nothing. It's defending the knight on d7, but that's it. Nothing else the queen is this juncture. So that plan of bishop to d6, queen to e7 was not an ideal plan.
Nice. So maybe just to give just a recap of what's going on for those who are joining us now, or maybe who are wondering what's going on. This is a live commentary of a match happening between Mehul Gohil and Nguku. These are Kenyan top 10, obviously, in Kenya. Mehul is the current Kenya champ. Nguku was the first runners-up. And of course, this is a match to watch. We're actually basically watching at the best chess players in Kenya. It's been well organized by Terrian Chess Academy, headed by Bwana Brand Kidula. He is the CEO and the director of Terrian Chess Academy. We also want to mention the sponsors for this event who've made this event happen. So we have Village Market, who've been definitely supporting chess for the longest time. I know since Terrian Chess Academy and Village Market have partnered, we've seen so many events. Unfortunately, COVID happened, but we can see we're still having events happening there. So as we speak, this game is not happening online. For those who think it's online, at some point we shall share with you guys live footage of the players on site with Bwana Kidula there and the chief arbiter being Duke Micheka, who's also on site. So they're actually playing at Village Market at the moment as we speak. And it's going to be quite an interesting match. They'll be playing 4 games, 2 games today, 2 games tomorrow. So Village Market has offered so many things. They've offered the venue, they supported the event through marketing. And we also have another sponsor. We just as you can see on our screen, we have Trademark Hotel, who also are at Village Market. You can actually take time, you guys, and if you've never been there, you should be there and just amazed at the beauty and the amazing things at Village Market. So I don't want to take so much time, but we'll give the sponsors more and more coverage as we go on with our commentary. So at the moment, we'd like to know if there's anything that has happened on the board, but I can see the position is quite tricky for white. Mehul has not moved yet. And I think it's quite obvious that this is not an easy position. Where to put the queen is really important. But I agree with Daktari. Queen f2 looks like the move for me also. And I think Mehul has seen it. Queen f2 has been played. And now I don't know what black will do. Possibly, I don't know. Daktari, now what happens for black?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out because there's a clear threat that I'm looking at, which is bishop e4.
Yes.
And Titus, a very interesting line is something tactics that just hit me.
You're seeing rook takes knight.
Rook takes knight, and then knight on f6, check, forking the king and the queen. So already those kinds of tactics are happening.
Yeah. There's a tactic. If you play bishop e4 immediately, rook takes rook takes the knight. But of course you can take
and then the knight
rook.
Goes to f6.
What if you take the rook?
Yes, so those options exist. I'm just highlighting that one. One of the possible tactical teams. Of course, then you have to figure it out directly. It's not going to happen exactly like that because there's a rook sitting already on c8, and you can pick the rook on c8, and that takes away that tactic altogether. And the tactic remains a valid tactic. And the current threat, in my opinion, is the knight going to the move, the square. I mean, the knight getting to the square d6 and c5, and that's a real possibility now, given that the bishop can move to e4. The other thing at Titus, we need to just show the young players.
Yes.
The position looks equal. Yes, I have a knight, you have a knight. I have a bishop, you have a bishop. Two rooks, two rooks. But then the two bishops aren't exactly equal, are they? The bishop on b7 is a very powerful piece.
True.
Number one, is looking at my king as a white king. Number two, it is stopping the knight from getting to e4. And this knight would just love to find some time on the e4 square, which is its fastest route to the weak squares on d6 and f6.
Yes.
So exchanging off that bishop is an advantage to white. So white wins something by exchanging off those. It looks like bishop for bishop, but in fact, it never is.
Yes.
So the other thing that masters have learned is that exchanges are not exchanges. You're exchanging a weak piece for a strong piece. You're exchanging a piece to take advantage of a square.
Yes.
What square is being defended by this piece? What is the threat? And at this juncture, Black has to figure out a solution. I don't see that solution right now. Of course, he has, he has to pay attention to. I really don't know how he can stop that.
I really don't know. At some point, I was thinking that if Black maybe could play knight to b8, maybe trying to relocate.
Knight to d8.
Trying to relocate to c6.
Then from c6, where does the knight go?
After c6, you bring the other rook to that open file. Try exchange one rook.
Understood. But where does the knight go from c6?
After c6, you're definitely trying to go now, and you're just trying to control the d4 square. And unfortunately, with that idea, you're also blocking your light squared bishop. It's hard.
The path I see for the knight right now is actually just knight to b6 and knight to c4, and I think Black missed that opportunity. This is why, instead of rook to c8, should have played knight to b6, the previous move.
True.
And another thing, look at which of your two moves can be prevented.
True.
So if knight to b6 had been played, the current move on the board would be knight to c4. Yeah. And as the pawn is being attacked on d3, then rook to c8 or d8 follow. Very small details, but those details make a really big deal. Yeah. Look at your pieces. Where are they going? Which one can be stopped? And why can it be stopped?
I can assure you, at this point, whatever is going through Nguku's head is, why is my knight on d7? Why is my knight on d7?
Exactly.
At this point, yeah.
Of course, the viewers may wonder why we're not talking about a move to stop the knight, which is a move such as f5. f5 is not an ideal move, principally because, number one, there's a room to take where white can take the pawn on f6, and then the pawn structure for Black becomes tricky, and Black has something called a backward pawn on e6. But then, at the same time, you realize that, yes, the bishops are all the same, but then the Black pawns are sitting on the same color of a square as the bishop, meaning that they're restricting your bishop by a lot. The white bishop has the pawns on the other side, the dark squares, meaning that the white bishop has more activity. And so immediately the bishop can relocate to the A2 G8 diagonal, and the pressure there will become unbearable at some point. So f5 is not a move you're considering at this time. It's not impossible, it may be done, but it's not a square that a move will be thinking about, because it will significantly weaken the c6 pawn, and a number of attacks can become fatal from such a square.
Wow. So I don't know if the rook on e can play to d8 now.
The rook on e to d8, yes, that looks like a move.
Yeah.
Because of course on the e file, the rook is doing nothing. That file is not opening up. Yeah. And it doesn't make sense unless Black is planning to play f5, in which case the rook could be near to defend that pawn, and you don't want to do that. So I think
do you find do you find a move by white, say if the rook played to d6? Does it?
What is this?
If do you see a possibilities of the rook on the d1 square going to d6?
Absolutely. The D1 rook going to D6 is a really strong possibility for two reasons. Number one, to double the rooks as a possibility, but also it allows for some swinging of the rook along those files. And if at any stage a white were to think about the move A5, then the B5 pawn becomes weak with or without the knight. So it's already a difficult position for black. And black is suffering from lack of space.
Yes.
A serious lack of space for his pieces, and just no clue where they're going. So
and
I can imagine.
I also agree. Maybe rook to d6 would also complement the queen and stop that knight from going to b6 also. So rook to d6,
almost forever, yes.
Yeah, and definitely will even free the queen to do other things now.
Sure.
Wow. And Nguku,
by the way, there's already a move such as queen to a7. Of course, that's a bit long distance. The queen will be going off tangent, wait a bit.
Yeah.
But that the thing is,
but
the dark
still
squares.
A possibility. I never even thought of
still
it.
A
yes.
Possibility.
Still a possibility.
Wow. Let's see. So what can black play here? Trying to think about this position for black. What does he have? I'm looking for a way to protect the knight as it goes up to b6, and I can't see it.
Yeah.
I'd already thought about the move rook to c4, so that you can stop the bishop going to b5, but then the bishop does a stutter. It moves one move square first, then the next goes to d3, rook has to go back, and then it goes to e4. So basically that will be a wasted move almost.
Sure.
But maybe not a bad idea. Maybe rook to c4, bishop to d3, and then rook to c7.
Oh yeah.
Doubling the rooks really, but I'm not sure whether that's a good idea or not.
Wow. I think the only thing that would really help black now is to see if he can exchange one rook, get control of one of the openings of the files, and I guess once there's not enough rooks, you see the advantage that white has, if you notice, is the fact that he has both rooks on open files, so the queen cannot even assist the knight to go to the b6 square, because that's the natural square for the knight now. So if rook d8 can be played by black, and then hopefully see if he can exchange one of the rooks, because he has to. I mean, he has to get some counter on this C and the D files.
Yeah.
The only advantage that
Titus, one of the things I'm not happy about, actually, the fact that the rooks are on both open files is a good thing, but there's a downside that when the knight moves, then the rook on c8 can exchange the rook on c1.
Yes.
And every exchange makes it easier for the side space, and that's really
exchange, exactly.
a downside.
True, very true. Let's see what Nguku will do. This is a very tough moment for him, because whatever he does shall decide the course of the game.
You know, we have been talking a bit fast on a number of issues. Perhaps it's important for us to remember our young players once again.
Yes, please.
And I think Nguku has played the rook to d8, which is more or less the only move that made some sense. Just wondering what happens in the event of bishop to to e4. But then the question of, there's always this thing about tactics.
Yes.
Incidentally, I used to think that grandmasters calculate the entire game from start to finish. But then, we are grateful for the internet, because we've realized grandmasters never think more than just a few moves ahead, unless there's tactics in the position. And tactics are not always there, just a few things. You look at, is there a check in the position? Is there a capture?
Yes.
What are called candidate moves? And is there a threat? And they look at it and find a solution. But the solution they get is probably the correct one 99% of the time. And they have an idea what the strategy is, who is better, why this is better, what weakness is created.
Exactly.
And those are the key things that one walks by. So we would spend, in the past, I would spend about 1 hour trying to think about a line, but the line is completely false because it has things like F5, which are moves that will not be playing.
Yes.
Like that.
Very true. It's there's this narrative that grandmasters see so many moves ahead, but they don't necessarily have to look so much ahead unless the position is critical, complicated, or if it has tactics. That's when they want to spend more time on a position. But
and actually, what I'm saying is tactically,
yes,
the move I've been planning all along, which is bishop c4, would be a blunder, a complete blunder, because when you play bishop to e4, then the rook just picks on c3.
Yeah, it just takes.
That's it. Just takes, and that's it. Because there is no, there is.
He's already captured a piece.
Two pieces. Yeah, 2 pieces for a rook, and that will be extremely painful, I tell you.
Let's see. So if knight plays to e4, bishop takes, rook takes c1.
Not.
So let's see. So,
that is knight. But I'm saying if bishop plays to e4, which is the plan I had in mind.
Oh yeah, if
then
bishop
the rook
plays
takes
to
on
e4,
c3.
yeah, rook takes c3.
C3, correct.
Oh yeah.
Then that's it too. If I pick the rook, then you pick back the bishop for free, the knight for free, and you have your bishop still 2 pieces for a rook. And what can I say? Black is just better. Actually, black is possibly winning.
Yeah, so bishop e4 is not even playable now.
Yeah, but of course, if that tactic wasn't there, then immediately you'd have a winning position for white as a result of bishop e4.
Do you think
so this is where tactics come into play.
Do you think queen e3 now can be playable to allow bishop e4?
Queen e3 to allow bishop e4. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that could actually be a move, no?
Yeah.
Let's see. That could be a move.
Queen e3.
That could be a move, actually. What's the downside? I don't see a downside.
Because still black does not have time to recover. The knight is not well placed. Unless black goes for the exchanges, takes knight back to f8, just like decides to just undevelop. Because the knight on f8 and the knight on d7 at this point are like one and the same thing. The knight is still very passive.
Titus, do you know Nguku is a very crafty guy? The move knight to rook to d1 actually threatens knight to b6. It threatens knight to b6, straight and simple. So if, say for example, we play the move you're suggesting, which is queen to e3, black can just play knight to e6, knight to b6, knight to b6.
And you cannot capture.
Well, I capture the rook on d1.
Oh yeah, and then yeah. And
if you capture with the knight, there's a rook hanging on c1, and if you capture the rook, there's a knight hanging on c3. So it's a brilliant move, knight to d1, and therefore Mehul has to take his time. This is tactics now. This is where tactics come into play. You can think just about 4-3 moves, but you need to see those things because we always assume that the knight can't go to b6, but it can go to b6. Yes.
Very clever.
It can go to b6.
Actually, knight can play to b6 immediately now.
Knight can go to b6 immediately now. So you have to stop that. And how do you stop it?
Because even if the knight goes to b6 and the rook on d1 captures captures down check, you just capture with the queen to d8, and your knight is safe.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. So it's a brilliant solution. It's a brilliant threat, and I'm just trying to figure out how do you stop that?
But then now what's the plan for it? Now I'm even confused now.
So I'm seeing moving the rook off the file, but then that's giving up a file already, maybe rook to e1, but it's a very difficult move to play to allow the black rooks to be that active. So
I think rook d6 now. Does it work?
Rook to d6. Okay, let's see. Rook to d6, rook to d6. Okay, rook to d6 for sure you cannot play knight. So that's an option. Let me see. Rook to d6, what happens? Again, in these positions, always think pick. Rook picks.
Actually, rook to d6 feels like it's such a serious threat because rook to d6, you can even play the other rook to d1 immediately. Even if you lose the knight on c3, you capture the other knight. I know it doesn't work.
No, you cannot because it doesn't. In fact, rook to d6, I'd imagine f6 works immediately. f6. If you play rook to d6, f6, how do you handle f6?
Hey, that's bad.
Undermine the defender. That's the tactic people pay attention.
It will even weaken the e5 pawn if you capture that.
It will.
Wow.
So
just to our viewers, thank you for following up. At some point, we shall be having Van Kidula, the director for Terrian Chess Academy, join us and giving us what's going on the ground. We shall be calling him shortly. But in the meantime, seems Nguku is getting some edge, getting back in the game. Still not so predictable. I think it really depends on. This is a very critical moment for the game. I believe whatever is going to happen now shall decide the winner. I think the next 5 moves here will determine the game. So let me see if I can get Kidula into the conversation as he gives us live commentary of what's happening on the ground. In the meantime, I'll just like to mention a few things about this match. This match was organized by Terrian Chess Academy, just yet again to bring things into speed, and sponsored by Village Market and the hotel trademark. The chief arbiter is Duke Micheka, who's also on the ground. And we are so delighted to be commentating this event. Me, myself, Titus Kirega, and Dr. Ivi Tangani. We are glad to have a lot of viewers on YouTube, but just like to mention a few. We have Carl Barrows Barbitos. He said Dr. Ngani with some very detailed explanations. Thank you very much, Carl Barrows. We have GTIYT. Says glued and looking forward to the commentary. Thank you to all that made this possible, the gladiators and the sponsors. Thank you very much, DTIYT. We also have Rita Wanjiko. He says, I think Mehul played bishop c4 to attempt black take the bishop in order to control the e5 square with pawns. I think it was Staines or like Alekine's idea. I'm not sure. That was way early in the opening. Thank you very much, Rita. Then we have Gishohi Brian. He says, what about knight b6 to knight c4? I have to go back into the game and get to where you were saying that, but thank you very much, Gishohi. I respect your comment. I know you're a strong player, and definitely that must have been a good move. Then we have Moki Kenneth. He says, bigs up to Village Market. Before this COVID-19 thing, attended several chess games at VM. Very true. Thank you very much, Kenneth. He also says, is there time increment after 40 moves? I'll have to confirm that with the organizer just to see if there'll be increment after the 40th move. Then at this point, Gisho Ibrahim says bishop e4 is met by rook times c3. True. That's just what we just said here with Dr. Ngani. Yeah, rook times takes c3 is a very nice tactic, and I think that will also be winning for black. So if you're watching us live on YouTube, we'd be glad to know you're there. Just leave a comment. You can even predict who you think will win the match. Will it be Nguku or will it be the reigning champion, Mehul Gohil? Let's see if you're gonna have unexpected results for this. I honestly don't want to predict who will win, but I can definitely tell you I have someone in mind.
Titus. Let me show you something super exciting, Titus.
Yes, please.
Let's say if White played rook to d6. My God, chess is beautiful. Rook to d6.
Yes.
See this move, eh?
Yes.
Knight to f6.
Knight to?
Knight to f, not x, knight f6. In this position.
If I play knight to f6, oh yeah, I cannot capture. What if I take your rook with check? Oh yeah, now you
take my rook with check. That's what I expect.
Exactly.
No, not release check, so I have to pick back your rook first, and I pick queen takes d8.
Yes.
Then you pick my knight on f6, which looks like it's free, no?
Let's see. Rook to d6.
Then so rook d6, knight f6.
Knight f6. Of course, I cannot capture the knight because I lose my rook. So if I take check, you take.
Queen takes the rook. No, I take with the queen.
The queen.
Yes. And then now you take the knight that is free, and you're happy you won a piece on f6, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Now check this move out. Rook takes c3.
Oh. So wait.
Rook takes c3. So this is where we are. Sorry, you can't move the pieces on the board. Eh?
Yeah.
But you're saying rook d6. Knight comes to f6, yes?
Yes.
And now, then the rook on d6 picks on d8, check. The queen picks back the rook, you must pick, it's a check.
So
correct?
after d6, and you've played knight to f6, do I capture or what do I do? Of course, I capture the.
No, you capture the rook. You capture the rook on d8 with check, yes.
Yes.
And then I capture with my queen as black on
then
d8. Then you capture the knight sitting on the knight on f6, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now I pick your knight on c3 with my rook. My rook on c8 picks the knight on c3.
Then I capture your knight with my rook.
Okay, now you see the back rank is undefended, eh?
Yes.
So queen comes to d1 check.
Check. Yes.
Queen to d1 check.
I block with my queen on f1 to f1.
Only move, right?
Yes.
Now the diagonal I was speaking about. Remember the C's a7 to g1 diagonal.
Yes.
Queen to d4 check.
Yes. I again block with my queen. Is it a draw?
There's a no. It's not a
you
draw.
Capture my
There's
rook.
a rook hanging on c3.
Yes.
So I pick that rook and we
yes.
say, ah, la la la. You know, chess is beautiful, guys. So there's that serious tactic right now, and it will be an amazing thing if it were to happen on the board. You know, these are the kinds of things grandmasters don't miss, by the way. And if you have to look at that tactic, it looks, when it's explained to you, it's very easy and simple. Of course, seeing it on the board, nobody tells you it exists, yes, but it's so rook d6, knight f6, rook takes d8, queen takes d8, pawn takes f6. Then out of the blue, as Judith Polgar says, rook takes c3 is a very hard move to see, but then once you see it, it all makes sense.
So do you think
the rook steps?
So do you think after rook takes c3, I would rather not capture? I would rather not.
But if you don't capture,
because I don't.
What do you do? Because I'm also attacking. But I'm also attacking the a3 pawn. What do you do?
I don't know. I think I just capture. Capture back.
You have to capture.
Then queen
and you're losing a pawn, by the way.
Do you know even if you want a draw, you can get a draw?
I don't want a draw. Why would I want a draw in a winning position?
After that, if black wants a draw, he can get a draw.
Yeah. Sure.
Because
it's just
back
and forth.
Exactly.
Oh wait a minute. But in the d3 move, I don't have to block with my queen. I can just move to h1. It's not a perpetual. So you must pick.
Oh yeah, I have to pick.
Yeah. But of course, if I was white.
No. Oh yeah. Hey, yes, I have to pick.
If I was white, because I know I don't do, if you draw, I'm very happy. So I'll do queen f2. If I play h1, of course, you remember you don't have an option here. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a beautiful resource.
Wow, so I think rook d6 is a bad idea. It's not playable by white.
Rook d6.
Rook d6. That is what is bringing all these tactics.
And actually, white has played queen to a7, something we looked at a bit earlier, and weren't quite sure about it because it seemed to take the queen off the center of activity. So it's a move that looks tempting, but most likely it's completely wrong. Yeah. Wow, and what is that? Let's see what's going on here. So after Let's go to the life position, if you may.
Yeah, tactics have happened. So let's go back.
Tactics have happened, I'm telling you.
So queen has gone to a7. Like we may have seen this, we have discussed this at some point, but we never went into the details. And it seems rook to c7 is a bad idea. I agree with that tactic by Mehul.
What?
Please note that.
My goodness, Mehul is strong. That was a trap.
Yeah, it was a trap.
Goodness gracious.
Wow. So how do you salvage this? Because I mean, you have to take the knight.
But if you take the knight, you lose the next exchange and you basically lose the game. Let's not say you lose the knight, you lose the game.
Oh, God.
Actually, this is resignable.
Yeah, this is resignable.
Wow. That's resignable. So let's go back. So that was literally a trap. What should have...
So I think after queen a7, I think it's high time you exchange. I think you have to move the knight back. Knight f8. Knight to f8.
No. Yeah, that's a possibility.
Or even knight to b8 to protect the a6 pawn.
Titus.
So let's see what is going on. I think
knight f8. Okay, let's look. Like, this is reasonable.
Clearly, it is. It is reasonable. Goodness.
Does it mean that bishop to queen to a7 was winning?
Yeah. It was actually winning. We actually discussed that move, but we never went into the length of it. Oh my goodness. What?
No. It's a losing move. It's a losing move. It's a completely losing move. Bishop and the queen to a7, Titus, is a losing move. Play the move knight takes e5. Knight e5 immediately.
You play knight e5 immediately.
Knight e5, yes, knight e5.
Or knight takes e5.
Knight takes e5, yes. What do you do?
I think you just capture the knight.
Okay, I pick your rook. Same things we're looking at.
Check. Oh yeah.
Yeah, check.
Of course, I take back with the rook. Then you get your knight back.
No. Actually, let me do it differently. Let me pick the knight on c3 first.
Okay. Knight on c3.
Knight e5. Knight.
Oh, knight takes e5.
E5. Knight takes e5.
Yes.
Pawn takes e5. Rook takes c3.
Rook takes c3. I capture your rook with check. Rook times d8 check.
Rook times d8 check. Great. So I pick your rook with my queen.
If you pick with the queen, wow, it looks like a draw. If I take your knight, what if I take rook times c3?
Rook times c3. I take the rook on. I come to d1 check.
With your queen, I have to play king f2.
Queen d2 check.
Queen d2 check. I go back to. I just want to be stubborn. Let me just go back to. Oh, no, you'll mate me. Let me go to g3.
G3. I think my queen takes on g2 check.
You take on g2.
Hello.
You're taking on g2.
G2 check. Yeah, and there must be mate somewhere here, by the way. This is just checkmate, no?
This is mating.
Is that checkmate?
It's a mate. It's a checkmate.
Is it?
No. I can actually go to. I can go to h4.
You can go to h4. H4, I take on h2.
I have to go back.
I wish you could move these pieces because I'm trying to sit in my head and I can't see everything. This looks checkmate-ish. Okay, the rook can come. This is checkmate. If the rook comes to f3, h3, then this is mate-ish.
So what has happened?
Actually, this is just mate-ish.
So Nguku has decided to capture the bishop. He's in a lot of trouble.
You capture out with the bishop?
Bishop takes the knight on d5.
Of course, then rook just takes.
Yeah, he takes with the rook on c7. Yeah.
Yeah, that's laid out. Yep, that's laid out. I think it's reasonable at this juncture. Okay, the other thing is we generally will not resign because it looks like an exchange only, but it's reasonable, to be honest.
Let me see if I can get.
In fact, one of the threats, I think there's a threat here right now, bishop to a2.
Yes. I'm trying to get Mr. Kidula into the conversation.
All right.
Wow. So there's a possibility there's 1-0 happening soon in favor of Mehul. So maybe just to read a few comments.
This is first position.
Just to read a few comments from our social media. We have Shege Cairo on WhatsApp saying, when you fail to take advantage of a tactic, your opponent will find one and finish you. I highly agree with him. I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think
That is true.
he also missed a tactic. True. What else is
Yeah,
being said?
but actually, Chege Karu is a very strong player. I remember I lost to him recently in the National League. He's a very strong player tactically, and also well prepared.
Yes. For those who don't know, this is a serious cage match, and this is a grudge match actually, because even the comments that have been flaring online, Mehul so confident that he's going to win this match, and I think if he wins the first game, it gives him a lot of edge considering only 3 games will remain, and if he wins another one, he's assured of a draw. So it's such a tough moment for Nguku. Being an exchange down, for those who are learning chess, by exchange down we mean uh, now Mehul has a rook versus a bishop for Nguku, and for those once you come to understand the game is that a bishop is less stronger than a rook, uh, points wise and even position wise. It just depends on the position sometimes. I think Nguku can still fight a bit, but let's see how far he can go with the bishop. But so far, it's not as easy as it seems for black. Not forgetting the knight is not any better. It's even now in more pressure than it was before. It's not so easy for black to get anything much on this. So I'm glad to say we have Brian online. Maybe we can just invite him into the conversation. He's gonna show us the venue, show us what's going on the ground. We can see the players. I'd like to see the reaction on Goku's face. Has to be very hard for him at this point. Knowing he's an exchange down, he'll be so mad at himself once he realizes what he's missed. By now, he's starting to see. I'm sure there's a lot he may have had on in his mind, and maybe he's not executed. Happens to all the chess players. At some point, you might underestimate a move, and it was a winning move. So I don't know if Kidula is ready, but when he is, we are going to have him live with us on our streaming. Uh, Bona Kidula, are you there? He seems to be muted. He's not. Kidula, can you hear us? I think he's yet to sort out his audio. We can't hear him yet, but he should be joining us shortly. In a very short while, we shall have him live. Wow. So
yeah, and Titus really for sure.
Yes. Please continue. So now a lot has happened. Maybe we can just discuss a few more moves. What is going on? After the bishop took, of course, the rook takes on c7. It was an obvious move. Queen goes to e8, coming out of the queen. Queen takes a pawn. Now look at the problems black is having. And g5 has been played, trying to undermine the e5 pawn. Wow. So after the exchanges of the pawns, queen goes to d3, of course having a catapult attack on the h7 pawn, threatening to mate. Maybe it's actually not mate, but just threatening to take pawn on h7 and have a very bad attack on the king. And then finally the knight goes to f8. That's the current position. And black looking bad, because white has two pass pawns on the queen side. I don't know. This is just so bad for black. So resignable. So resignable.
Yeah, but I sort of wish that instead of picking the pawn, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, it's bad because these pawns are ready to match. B5, B6, B7, that pawn is gone. So the critical moment in that middle game has led to the loss. And now I agree I completely agree with you, Daktari. If you notice at some point in the move, was it the 17th move, where the queen went to E7 instead of going to instead of trying to dislocate to B6, it has led to all this. Queen positioning. Because at the moment, if you look at the black queen, it is so passive. It is so defensive. It is doing the job of a bishop.
Oh, this looks bad. For a moment, I was forgetting that there is that when the bishop is pinned, so and Mehul is trying to just make a queen on the other side.
Yeah,
but the bishop is pinned. I would have played bishop to A2 just to take that bishop off. And remove any tactics that could be left in the position. But Mehul is taking a simpler route to it. Just you have passed pawns, push them.
Correct.
Push your passed pawns. Yeah. And, wow, I don't think Mehul will let this go. It's a straightforward winning position.
Yeah, that's quite direct. But I can see Nguku wants to fight and maybe give it.
That's us, no? That's what we do.
Yeah, he has to fight.
Something looks wrong with that move, queen to D8, and I can't just tell what it is, but it looks absolutely wrong.
It's the element of
queen to D8 does not look right. Is it queen to C2 or what? There's just something off with that move, completely. As in, it's a move I wouldn't recommend at all.
The sad part is how passive the queen is.
Yep.
He's not had even a check. He cannot even attack. Right now, black will have to concentrate on those 2 pawns, and that is where he's going to resign.
No, he'll not resign.
Because I'm seeing the bishop.
Yeah, I think queen to C2 is a move. It's a move that has been played.
All right.
But I've seen what he's planning actually to bring the queen out to G5 square. Okay, create some complications, but the complications that can't be trusted.
Yeah. And possibly play F3. You see, at this position, even white can even play rook takes D5.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
And maybe it's probably one of the better moves because
you don't give him anything. At this point, you have to pass pawns. This threat is temporary. You can even play that and then play queen F5. Rook takes D5.
Queen F5.
Yeah, queen F5.
Queen F5.
Yeah.
You're brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks right.
Yeah.
I think so that you make a decision about what you're trying to do because the 2 passers on the queen side will just win. You can't black.
And queen F5 is so bad because now you're threatening queen F7 check.
And
exchanging the queen. So it's just so
the queen exchange is mandatory.
It's mandatory. And I think that's what Mehul should go for.
Okay, but Nguku has done a very good thing because you see, when you're losing, you create complications. Just create a mess.
Yeah,
there's everything flying around. No strategy. He just tactics. And if you get the tactics right, you're good. And so I think I support your move, rook d5, and followed by queen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So what about what if queen after queen d5? Is f3 playable? No, it's not playable. Yeah, queen takes d5 is the move. I doubt Mehul has to see that.
Well, no, it's a difficult move because you see, if you come back to what I said earlier, looking at the position, you see that you are an exchange and a pawn up.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to give back your pawn in this situation, except you
But
see
I think after f3, it will complicate the position. And please note that if white does not capture d5, there are still possibilities of h5, h4 by black in case d3 is played.
Let's give it this.
You just complicate the matter completely.
He's complicated it thoroughly. Because I think if you don't play that move, what can you do?
I don't know. Honestly, don't know.
Plus, he's attacking the e5 pawn.
So Mehul plays bishop a2. I think that's a bad move. Because now he's allowing the bishop to run away to a8.
Yeah, what's the big deal there?
Because you don't have to exchange the bishop. If you are black, at this point you don't want to exchange anything. So you just remove your bishop. Is there any threat? No.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what bishop to a2 is trying to achieve. You're getting off the diagonal where you are trapping the knight.
Yeah. Plus, you had a very good coordination between the queen and the bishop on that diagonal. Now he's removing the bishop from the good diagonal.
All right.
Okay, bishop a8.
Bishop a8. Yeah. Okay.
Then followed by
I don't understand that very well.
Bishop
followed by
a8
f3. Okay.
Bishop a8 f3. Then h5 h3.
That is when h5
All right.
And I see Nguku has played bishop to f3.
Yeah, bishop to f3 is.
That stops f3, no?
Yeah, it stops f3.
He's attacking a rook, okay.
Actually,
attacking a rook.
And I think it could just have a problem. That move.
All right.
What do you do? What do you do after rook d4?
With what purpose? Rook d4, can't I just pick the pawn on e5, forking the rooks? Rook d4, queen e5.
Oh, yeah.
And then you probably have to double the rooks somewhere. Okay, that's triple the rook and the queen and everybody else. Okay, so that's probably not, maybe it's not a bad move.
The move. Yeah, but still not the move.
And there's a check on there's a check somewhere on e3. It's tricky. Or this is complex. It looks like pieces are traded off, but whenever you see queens and rooks and bishops all looking at each other, it's you need an engine to get through this one it's, accurately. And talking about that time, Mehul is down to 9 minutes, Nguku is at 23 minutes. So this
actually time here.
Maybe you should have picked the bishop. Player factor.
Also think so.
Mind you, if you blunder and move the queen off the second rank, it's checkmate.
Yeah, it's checkmate. You cannot remove the queen.
Yes. So should we play rook to d2 or something?
Yeah, it looks like the move, yes.
Or let's play rook to e1. I'm wondering, because so that we protect that e pawn.
Oh yeah, rook to e1. My whole thing's
okay, played f1.
Yeah, he's played rook f1.
Which attacks the bishop, so that's also a tempo move, not bad. That makes sense.
So Lucas managed to relocate the bishop, possibly going to g6 in case the the battery is set up again and still threatening f3.
That I don't agree with.
I also don't. I don't
Bishop
think
to F. Bishop to
he
H.
should not have removed
Getting
the
off from
bishop from that
direction.
diagonal. Yeah,
I don't think he should have.
I think he should have played bishop to a8. Just have the bishop way farther, attacking this castling position, and just undermine the g2 pawn.
Hey Titus.
Yeah.
Hey Titus.
Yes.
What happens if you attack the f4 pawn? Queen f2. Attack the f4 pawn. So he just pushes it. Okay. Just pushes it to f3. That does not work. Okay. So f3. Can we move the king away? Yes, we can. Let's move the king away to h1. Now you have to capture.
Yeah.
But there's a rook hanging. So again, picks on e5.
Or takes on e5.
Attacking the rook. Then there's queen f2 check. No, that's you can't do that actually. Yeah. He's actually played a version of it, but I don't like that version because now he's played queen d2, but queen d2 allows queen picks e5.
Queen e5, yeah. And I think
still.
But it's still okay.
But queen takes e5, queen takes f4. It's tricky stuff.
Wow, the knight is trying to come back into life, and Nguku could get something.
The activity is amazing.
Now the knight is starting to get life.
But I've been watching these games online where the Speed Chess Championship, Hikaru Nakamura, Magnus Carlsen, Wesley So, and the whole team, and there are positions where someone is clearly winning, and before you know it, it all turns around and the game is lost. It's unbelievable. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Hikaru Nakamura versus Magnus Carlsen. It's happened tons of times. So yes. I wouldn't be surprised if in this position where it looks like Black should have resigned, because of time, which is a factor, we have a different direction.
True. So I allow me to just read a few more comments from our viewers online. So GTYT says, instructive commentary, guys, well done. Hope budding players are watching and learning. We desperately need many strong youngsters take over from the dinosaurs who are still holding fort. Very true, GTI, I agree. Then we have Brand saying interesting line, but instead of e times f6, rook d1 followed by knight times b5, haven't you lost a pawn? I'm trying to see. He's saying instead of e times f6, then rook d1 followed by knight times b5. Haven't you lost a pawn?
Maybe I can find the comments and just see that, so you can.
Yeah, I think I'll also understand what he wanted to say there. He said that is after rook d6 idea. Okay, I'll come back to you on that. Then Muki Kenneth says Nguku played the losing move, rook c7. Now it's over. Yeah, rook c7 was it brought that tactic of where the knight complicated everything else. So GTI is asking, and I think I'll ask Dr. here. He's asking, when will Kenya get an IM, LO 2400?
Easy stuff. Within the next 5 years, 100%, there'll be an IM in Kenya, maybe even sooner. But there's a young WFM, Fatima Ahmed, I think. FM Steve posted a game of his against FM Fatima in the Evans Gambit. And you should look it up. It's a YouTube channel, I think it's called Better Chess,
yes.
FM Steve Home, and that game is amazing. If you look at the way the 14-year-old girl attacked FM Steve, you don't have a doubt in your mind that Kenya has great players. Right now, I'm looking at other chess players. Cassidy won Bungoma Open, I think, last year.
Yes.
And already, I think she's less than 10 years old. And in the East African Online Chess Championship that concluded last weekend, she topped the under-18 category, and she's under 10, and that's her actual age.
Wow.
So it's just, I mean, the talent in Kenya is tremendous. I think part of what has held us back is many of these youngsters do not focus on chess. They have other interests, and those interests take them away from their talents. If it was Europe, then players like Cassidy, like Fatima, like Naya, Gosrani, all these strong players would do nothing but chess,
yes.
with a little bit of academics on the side. And Kenya would be, the world leaders. So I'm very optimistic. The future is bright. The resources are now here.
Yes.
10 years ago, we didn't know how grandmasters think. We used to think they calculate everything from start to finish. You have no hope.
Yes.
Now we know they are looking at basic principles of the chessboard that anybody can understand. Of course, there's some gifting. Of course, there's a lot of hard work.
Yes.
The Polgar sisters prove it. So we know that we now know what we need to do. And there are a lot of youngsters who are doing it. Plus, chess is becoming increasingly popular. So I do expect that within the next few, it's the way to go.
I agree with you completely, 101%. It's also good to note that for you to have IMs, GMs, the level of play is not only about individuals, it's also about the coverage of our game. I'm happy to know that maybe during COVID, chess has had more exposure, more publicity, more people have played chess, and those who already were playing have greatly improved. And it's actually a possibility. I'm even saying, like you, it should be less than 5 years. We should get an IM in Kenya. Uganda already have one, and we are not far badly off compared to them. And I'm even comfortable to say we should get a GM very soon. I think we just have to thank God that COVID is ending and chess activities will be back.
Sorry, Titus, let me interrupt you.
Yes.
Let me just acknowledge Mehul is a strong chess player. With literally no time on his clock, he found the move Bishop B1,
yes,
which is an immediate solution. You see, Bishop B1, if Queen takes on E5, he picks on G6, and if the Queen picks the Rook, he picks the Bishop on Knight 5. And so Mehul Nguku couldn't pick the pawn, and so he played Rook to D8.
Yes.
And after Rook to D8, Nguku was played very quickly, Queen to F2, which is, in my view, is the absolute best move. So what's going to happen is, if the Queen picks on E5, then of course Bishop picks G6, and the process repeats. And if the Knight picks, then of course Queen picks F4. This has been an interesting move. Maybe the one last question is, what happens in the event of F3? And F3, I still think
is a very strong move. I think after F3, then Rook D2.
Rook D2, yeah, that's a threat. F3. But then, of course, you always have Queen going up to G3, so I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So do you think do you think Knight H4 is playable?
Do I think Knight H4 is playable?
Mm-hmm.
Knight H4.
No,
Knight H4 I don't think at all, because Knight H4 I just play my Queen to G3 immediately. Or right now, before E3.
Yeah, no, like F3. Now. Right now. Does it have anything?
Before F3.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it does actually. Looks interesting.
I'm not sure about it, but the problem with Knight, I know it doesn't work. No, it does. No, it doesn't work. I'm thinking like black. I don't want to lose another piece. I don't want to exchange. I feel like my Knight is better than the light squared bishop, even though I would rather exchange my light squared bishop with white's light squared bishop, but retain the Knight.
Titus, if you're to play Knight, you can't pick with the Queen. So you can't. I was going to say just pick on F4. Yeah, this is how you lose moves. But first you defend the G2 spare, maybe Bishop E4. Yeah, then immediately.
So Nguku has decided to fight. It could be worthwhile. Could get something here, but it's not obvious.
I think there's no increment, because if there's increment, Mehul won't be doing this badly on the clock. He has 4 minutes.
Yeah, he has 4 minutes. Actually, he has 4 minutes.
But his position is winning, completely winning. The only thing is time is also a piece. It's a very strong piece.
Yeah, and Nguku is managing to
so
complicate. Yes.
Yes, it's complicated. So blunders can happen anytime, guys.
Yeah,
if it was me, you play knight to f4. I don't have time. I find I've picked on.
I
I
just
pick
pick on
f1,
F1, then you're surprised by the
and then
check.
collapse. The number of times I've done that is amazing. You'll be shocked.
But then knight h4 is
for me,
a trick, yeah.
It's a trickier move. I'd probably think of that move.
Because knight f4, then I push. Does it work? Really, no.
And if you push, I'm so happy because
when I just go to g3.
And actually, there's no threat. What I'll do, what if I just queen? If you play knight f4, I just queen.
Oh, yeah.
There's no threat. There's literally no threat. Oh, wait, there is a threat. You can actually play pawn takes on g2, and then knight comes to f3, which is a mate. There's a serious threat, boss. I agree. Okay, fine. So I can't just push. Okay. Maybe guys can put in the comment, why is it that we don't have our strongest players?
Yeah.
Why are there no Kenyan chess grandmasters, let alone international masters? What is the reason? Are we, what is the reason? Put that in the comments, guys. Let's hear.
Robert is asking, is f3 playable here?
f3.
Yeah.
And that's what we have been saying, actually. f3 is most likely playable, but I'm thinking maybe there is a queen g3 immediately.
Yes.
As a result of that.
Let's see. Brian is asking, what about b6? He's talking about b6 for white. I think, yeah, it's still playable for white. There's not much threat yet. Or even just take the knight. Why not just take?
My only pain with the move. Oh my goodness. Oh, if after f3 is a really strong move, by the way, because it's an immediate threat.
Yeah. So what? Let's see. After f3, you are suggesting queen to g3.
Queen to g3, yes. But I was just looking at this tactic. If someone was to play a b6, for example, then I'm worried, because what if the knight comes down to f4, threatening knight h3, knight h3 check, which is forcing the king and the queen.
So you mean after f3 you play b6?
After f3, if someone asked whether you can play b6, but I'm saying after b6, asked, what if you play knight? Yeah, what if you play knight f4? How do you handle that? Because that
knight f4 after you push, because there's a pawn on f4.
Yes, so I'm saying you push on f3, then white plays b6.
Yes.
And then knight f4.
Hey, that's bad. Hey, that's bad.
It is actually.
I don't think white will allow knight f4.
You can't allow knight f4.
Hey, you cannot now allow.
Because immediate threat is knight h3, which just basically the pawn is pinned. It's basically you want to fork the king and the queen. And also at the same time, by the way, there's a bigger threat, by the way. The bigger threat being pawn takes g2 and then knight h3 mate.
Yeah. Yes.
Pawn takes g2, knight. This checkmates just out of nowhere looks like the checkmate out of nowhere. Because once the knight is sitting on f4,
and you know the queen
even
is
if the rook moves away,
even if the queen takes the pawn on g2, still mate. Oh no, it's not mate yet.
If what? No, it's mate. If you pick if after knight b6, knight f3, let's assume you push once again to f7. Then now I pick on g2 with the pawn. What do you do?
Yeah.
Knight f takes g2.
Oh yeah. Hey, it's mate.
It's mate, isn't it?
Mate.
Oh yeah, because you must pick the knight.
Because the queen cannot capture the knight. I mean, it's still mate. The queen cannot capture the pawn.
Sorry, that's a bad move actually. Just pick the knight. Knight picks back down here. So you rather do a check 4 can capture this free queen.
Well, because queen can take the knight on f4.
On f4, yes. And then when you pick the rook down, you just bring back your rook. But it's a discovered attack, no?
Yeah.
So in fact, you can't. You lose it. It's even worse. Titus. No,
okay,
this is losing.
Let's see. After f3.
F3.
Let's say b6 has been played. Then knight.
b6 has been played. Knight f4. Knight f4, and then let's say, just for the sake of it's a bad move, but just for the sake of showing the tactic,
yes,
we play b7. Okay. So in b7 now, the move you are saying is pawn takes g2.
If you take g2, I've seen. I cannot if I capture your knight with the queen times.
Then it's a double check.
Yes.
There's a queen picking on f1,
and
then there's a queen discovering check. So you must capture the f1 queen with your king, and then this pawn is also captured for free. So essentially, it's just a lost position.
It's just lost. Actually, it's
now black is winning.
It's actually mating, because you see what happens after the double check. King takes f1, then rook d1 mate.
King takes f1.
Rook d1 mate.
Of course. Oh yeah. Oh dear. Yeah. Okay. Straight mate. Checkmate. That's it. So clearly, there's a big threat after f3.
Yeah.
So Makligeo, you're absolutely right. I think f3 is probably the most challenging move, because you can be tempted in time pressure to play a move such as
b6. Yeah. Wow.
Underestimating what's happening here. Yeah, it's tricky. So wait. So why not just pick the knight and kill these stories?
So on a light note, Victor Goma is saying f6 is gobbled up. The next move recommended by the engine is to resign.
After which move?
After f4. But I don't think it's that obvious.
For sure.
Victor is just a
let me see if I can find comments. I was trying to find comments on once the G's on f4 is gobbled up, the next move 100% Victor, because if and first you have a good name. If the f4 pawn is the source of all counterplay, if it goes, just resign. I fully support that.
Yes.
There was a question being asked. GTI White says best to resign now to avoid mental torture and conserve energy for the next game. Actually not, because Mehul has only 4 minutes.
Yes.
And there are these complications starting with f3. So I fully support not resigning, because if you play f3 fast and wait, you know what's the worst that can happen? You lose the game. So play f3 and wait. Yeah, and just play f3 and wait.
Just play f3.
You'll be surprised. Let's see.
I like the possibility that at some point black has rook to d2. It's such an asset. Just knowing at some point you can bring your rook to d2 and you have an open file. And it's also good to note that the light squared bishop on h5 is not a useless bishop. It's stopping. It's even coordinating with the rook to attack the d1 square. So there could be something.
I'm looking at Gishoi Brand's line. I'm not sure at what point. Brand, maybe you can indicate the move number so we can understand. Because I think the tactics relating to, instead of e times f6, rook to d1. I think that line is winning for white, though. I think that pretty much you've seen what there is there. Maybe you can just post the move number, Brand, if you're listening.
So the knight has played to h4. I never saw that coming immediately. I think Nguku decided to read on my script. I thought it's a move to play. Of course, please note, queen takes f4 is not such a good idea.
Not such a. It's not. It's a shocker if you like to play that. You play it and you then go and cry for the next one.
It's actually losing.
It is. But it's actually a strong move because I'm trying to see. Okay, I was thinking we play Bishop E4 at this juncture.
Yeah.
But after that, the move that comes is F3, no?
Yeah.
And now what is the response?
Oh, F3 looks bad.
So
you pick F3. You know, I'm also thinking. I'm also asking myself. I'm also asking myself: is King H8 playable? Then Rook
King
G8.
H8.
Yes. Then Rook G8.
King H8.
And he played V6. Oh my God. Now this.
That looks bad.
Yes.
That looks bad.
What happens now? Let me get my glasses. I need to see this game better. Wow.
Yes, so what happens after Bishop F3?
Good question. No, yeah, what happens? I think what happens after Bishop F3?
I'm trying to see.
They said Bishop F3 is looking bad for white. I don't think F3 was playable now. Because now Queen G3 is
an exchange of
like a fire extinguisher. It has extinguished all the fire.
Yes. Oh, he's played F3. That one is over.
Yeah, this is now.
I think just play Queen F3 and say bye-bye. I think it's over. This is Mehul has 3 minutes, but now you can win this with 1 minute of chess.
Yeah, this is not easy.
But what would have happened in the event of Bishop F3 in that situation?
So what happens after Queen G3? Just exchange the queens, that's it, eh?
Yeah, just exchange the queens.
Now what if he plays Bishop G4? Bishop G4, then Queen E3 check. Actually, it's not yet over. It's not obvious.
In this position.
What happens after Bishop?
Saying in what? In this?
After Bishop G4.
After Bishop G4.
Queen
what
G3
you do
check.
is.
I think you see King H8 was not a weak move. King H8 was not a weak move. Just
it wasn't, but if you play Bishop G4, I think now you can just pick the pawn, no?
Yeah. Right now.
Now you can just pick the pawn. If you play Bishop G4, you can just pick the pawn on F3.
Oh yeah, you can just But with the what?
Just pick the pawn. The bishop is pinned with the pawn.
Oh,
pawn picks pawn. Yeah, pawn picks pawn.
Okay.
If at this position you played, because knight picks on F3, rook picks on F3, and you can't come to C1 check because the rook on C7 is defending that.
I'm actually seeing something else. So if I play Bishop G4 and you take the pawn,
yeah,
I just play.
You just play.
Yeah, it's losing. It's losing for black. I think it's just lost.
Because the bishop is pinned. It's lost. I think maybe that's what Ben overlooked, and now we can expect resignation. Okay, there's a point at which you don't resign, but here now you resign, Ben. You look at this back and agree with the team. You did try. We also know Ben had confessed earlier on Facebook that he hadn't been preparing for this match, and he doesn't take losses well. So he's a really hard worker. He drives himself. He has tremendous discipline. I think his greatest gift in chess is discipline.
Yes.
And I'm very surprised that he quickly played bishop to, sorry, rook to c7.
Yes.
Because ordinarily expect him to see knight to d5 in the flash of the moment. And this comes down to lack of practice.
Yes.
I think he's been working very hard. By the way, he's a fantastic employee at his employers. I think his chess has shown in his work. And so this will haunt him, especially because he missed all those chances. And I'm particularly displeased about the line he started with the. And what's happening? The queens were exchanged, and then a very tricky move played. Oh, this guy, this Ben. Now he's played pawn takes g2, and pawn takes g2. If the rook moves off the back rank,
yeah,
it's 1-0 because the rook comes down and says check, and then the queens. So of course Mehul is not falling for that. So that's it. Just resigns.
Actually, this is bad. Yeah.
Resignable. Yeah, because the knight has to move. Maybe knight f3, king picks g2.
Yeah.
Else pick the pawn on e5.
On e5 and
exchange the rooks, or even just
rooks, even rooks c8. Just
don't even play c8 first. Play the pawn up one step. Oh, that's not possible because there'll be a bishop check.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pick the pawn. Pawn you must pick. You know what I do? Sadistic move. After knight takes e5, I play bishop e4 first. No, that you must.
Oh yeah. Bishop e4 a4 first. Yes.
Oh, watch out! After rook d2, watch out! Don't play.
Don't play king h1.
This is a draw, no? This is a draw. It is. This is a no. Or you can go up. This is a draw. Complete draw. Then I saved it. Knight h2, knight f2, knight f3. Check. This is a well-known drawn position.
Oh.
Completely drawn. Unbelievable. Knight h2, knight f3. An amazing save. Goodness gracious, how did that happen?
And please note, you cannot put your king on h4, on h1. Nowhere on h. You cannot put your king anywhere on h. It's a bad idea. It's mating.
Wow. Unbelievable.
I hope Nguku.
Unbelievable.
I hope Nguku.
No, this is an obvious. This he knows. This is just a drawn pattern. I think, but then I'm not seeing this the calculation. I just know this.
Oh my God.
The second file and the knight on f3. That's a draw because the king can never go to h. Can never go
to e1 successfully.
There is rook.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is. In fact, black has to be careful. White has to be careful. Nguku has saved this position. You see, guys, where you don't resign, and Mehul will not be happy. This is just because of time.
He's just been stolen this game. Yeah.
He's looking now for a win.
Oh my God.
He's just stolen that draw. Unbelievable. Well done, Ben.
Oh my God.
It's a complete draw, this one, by repeated moves. Basically, what we mean is black is going to play knight to h2.
I'm looking forward to have Kidula online so we can see the reaction from the players. This is just
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
What?
This is gonna be a draw by perfection for.
Oh wait, is he winning?
No, he's not winning.
What's happening?
Oh my God. And please note, do you know there's a possibility of bishop h3 mate? If
that's the thing, that's what he's planning.
Yeah.
He's blundered.
That's another. Why did he play bishop h7 check?
Because of the checkmate.
No. He wants to. No, he wants to sack the rook on f7 check and exchange the bishop on the knight.
Yes, but what if king d7? How do you protect? How do you stop the knight?
Or even king h1, h8.
How do you stop the knight?
What happens after king h8?
King h8, king h8.
King h8, then after rook c8, king takes the bishop.
Unbelievable. What?
King H8.
Ben is winning this game.
Imagine, now King H8.
This is unbelievable.
I think B6 all along was a bad move. Oh my goodness. I think that's the move. King H. Oh, wait. Doesn't work. No, King H8 does not work because Rook takes. No. King H8. King H8. No, Nguku, no. But either way, he still, even if Rook takes F7 check, he still has this mate on H3.
This is lost. I can't believe it. And there's no escaping it.
I wish I could see them. We'll talk to Brand shortly. He'll be giving us some 4-1 on what is happening there. He's also very excited to watch, so I'm sure he's also very intrigued into the game. So Rook check. So where do you put your king? Maybe down, go to F8, then come back to G7. What?
Oh my goodness. You had this fast on the TCA Village Market live stream with Tetas Kirega. Nguku winning an unwinnable game. This happens every time. We are not masters, yes, but Magnus Carlsen, those guys. Wait, that doesn't look right.
It actually is okay.
It is? What's the plan? Oh yeah, just keep coming towards the rook.
Okay. Yeah. Just stay on the dark square. After another check, play King G7.
But wait, if he picks, it's your own bishop. Yeah, you can't pick your own bishop. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't pick your bishop on H7. I thought you just pick the bishop on H7 and H3 is not available. And Saril.
For those who are watching, the threat here is bishop H3 mate. So Nguku has
H3 checkmate, yeah.
Imagine.
Nguku has stolen this one.
Imagine, the rook cannot go to H7. It's so painful.
And now the bishop can go to D3 or H3 checkmate.
Yeah.
Now
Mate has position, 2 squares to check.
So checkmate. Checkmate patterns. The king is still mated. Looks like there are no pawns around it, but just to note, this structure, this position with the king, rook on the 7th, knight on F3, is checkmate.
I can tell you for sure that was world class.
The king can't move.
That was a world class comeback. I never saw that coming.
Oh my goodness.
Well done. It dates back to when you said F4 is a bad move. When you said F4 was not supposed to be played, and now you can see there's a pawn on G3. You just wish there was a pawn on G2.
Of course. It's been said by many masters actually. I listen a little bit. It looks funny, but those moves, when we can move the pawns, especially the F file pawn, you have to be very, very careful about what you're doing.
I honestly, I'm just so impressed by the play by Nguku. He came from a losing position. We thought he's getting a draw.
You know what, Taters? I'm going to call it. I'm going to call this match. It's a 4-game match, but if Mehul has lost this one, I'm not seeing the comeback.
This is just sad.
3 more games to go, but
for Mehul, he has to be so disappointed now. I mean, the what ifs, just so many.
And he's resigned. He has resigned.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations to Ben.
Very well played game by Mehul until one tactical blunder in time pressure.
Just a few moves. A few moves.
What could he have done in that position?
So knight H4, it was okay. Knight H4. Wow, that is just amazing.
Does it mean he can't move this rook?
On what position? Oh, yeah. I'm actually trying to see how he could have stopped the mate. Let's see. So what? Actually, the biggest threat here was rook d2. Rook d2.
It is. So how do you stop that?
So it means after the queen exchange, you know, it's like it feels like there's no solution. I think the solution here was to play rook e1. Don't double up your rooks. But it brings a fork. You know this position.
No, I don't get this one.
I think after f times g, you have to surrender that rook. Then play b7. I don't know if playing b7 is the move. So that in case of rook d1, I think you just have to give away this one rook. You have to.
Goodness gracious. You have to.
Yeah, you have to. What do you do now?
So before knight h4, Ben really thought for a long time.
Actually,
you ask him if he worked out all this.
That would be amazing. Because I'm so impressed.
That would be amazing.
Because after that, everything is forced. Everything is forced.
You need to take
Brian on.
No. So you need to take the tempo. I can tell you, you need to take the tempo.
If I take the tempo, you.
So we are glad to be joined by.
Challenge. So this is here, right? Where do I play?
I came down.
No, don't do that. Take the tempo first.
You can come to B6.
So, Buana Kidula.
Brian, we can see you, but you can't see the players. Maybe if you turn the camera there, use the rear camera, we see.
Use the rear camera. So let me.
Yes, on the players.
Okay, where is it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we have the players analyzing the game.
And then choose the phone to the side. Yes, thank you.
Queen C7.
Queen C7 is bad.
Take the tempo, man. You should have taken it.
Before is not a disaster.
You can't.
I can see the frustration on Mehul's.
Okay. Okay, let's see the game.
I thought.
Okay. I played that.
Yeah, you see that.
Even here, you still take the tempo.
See,
Even here,
if I take the tempo, then 95 doesn't have much. Because you know you're forced to play bishop b6. 97 is a threat. Down. I thought good.
No, you have to play.
It's forced.
You would have sucked here.
Yeah.
If you did.
So I was aiming for this strong.
Okay.
I have good control.
Now, this.
Okay. I saw that. I saw that.
This is here.
Yeah, as you
No, we only play this.
yeah, knight b6 was the move.
No. It's my turn. You played this first. Right?
Yeah.
No. It's like because I played here before.
So what? Let's see.
So this is this way, right?
Knight d7. Okay, so it was like this. I think knight d7. I came down. You played g6.
Yeah.
G6 and then I played f4.
Correct. So here is it's very different.
Yeah.
There you take at one time. No, is that the correct thing?
I think
But this one, right? Why can I do this now?
very bad.
Okay. Okay. You can't do those things. I told you there's going to be activity. By the time you get, this is the stupid thing I missed, and then I'll be a serious problem.
So it's like this, right?
Yeah.
Count from plus C4.
Yes, that one I'm key. That one I'm key. I think I'm fine, yeah. I think this I can't play because this move was, that's where the game got.
Okay, as you can see, the players analyzing there. Am I still on air?
Yes, you are.
You agree?
So you can see that was a swindle by. Maybe you want to say something to the people who are watching you here. How was that feeling at that point? Mehul, just a moment. How was that feeling? How was that feeling, Nguku?
No, frankly speaking, I think I have.
Let's come to the shade here where there's no light from the window. All right.
I think, frankly speaking, that one I have stolen. You know, I had a bad game for a very long time. In fact, I thought it was long. I was split. There are many ways other than I think what he played. Going for the 2 bombs there, pick one, put pressure on the C file. I think would have been a much more efficient way of doing it.
So does it give you confidence going to the second game? Now that you realize you made a classic
I know.
mistake.
So I think the game was fine in my view up until I played Rook A C1. I think at that point I should play Knight B6. After I played Queen F2, my dark squares are really looking bad, and I think I wouldn't play it the way I have again. So going to refresh for a few more minutes. Just
Before you go, what came to your mind when you saw Knight D5 on the board?
I'd actually not contemplated it.
Yes.
Fun enough, I had not, but I knew at that point I was actually in a bad position, but I did not even calculate Knight D5. After he picked there, I knew, no, it's a bad game, it's lost.
Okay, Nguku, wish you all the best. Go and prepare for the next one. So there we are. So there we go. Thank you.
Before Ben goes, one moment, one question for Ben. Questions for Ben, 2 questions for Ben.
Ben, one question for you before you go.
Yeah.
Ben, congratulations. That's an amazing turnaround. It's a miracle on the chessboard we have witnessed. Thank you for that miracle.
It is a miracle.
2 questions.
Yeah.
The moment you played Knight G4, Knight H4, Knight H4, just before the end, Knight H4 towards the end. Had you envisioned these tactics?
Yes, I remember that.
Had you seen these tactics almost to the end?
No. So it was the only way to continue. There was no other way. Pawn push was losing to bishop times knight. I didn't like that. What was the other move? Knight takes the pawn on D4, was losing to queen takes the pawn on F4. So it was the only way. I didn't have to calculate anything much. Yeah. It was the only way to continue. There's no other alternative.
And then did you realize that after the bishop queen to A7, just before knight came to D5, you are actually winning after your knight takes on E5. So
knight takes on D5 was winning?
Yes, knight takes on E5. Knight takes on E5. Knight takes on E5.
Oh, knight takes on E5. You're saying instead of knight H4, knight takes on E5.
So Mehul played queen to A7. Then you played your rook to C7. And then he hit you with the...
Oh, so what was the move there?
Knight takes E5. Knight takes E5. But it's a mafia tactic.
He just picks back.
He picks what? You see the rook? The rook is defending.
F times E5.
Rook takes D1. Rook takes D1.
Sorry?
Rook takes rook.
Okay, what if he starts with the rook takes rook?
Then queen takes the rook. And then he picks your knight now, no?
Okay, and then he picks the knight.
Then now you pick his knight. Then now you pick his knight on C3.
What, the other rook? Rook takes knight.
Rook takes knight. And then your queen is coming to D1. Then you come to the D2 and you pick the rook on C3.
Yeah, we actually saw that.
That's a deep one. Sorry. I take back that. That's yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
But it's hard. It's hard.
So queen A7 is a mistake.
It's a mistake. Yes, queen A7 is a mistake. It allows the pawn to fall on D5, but it's yeah.
But well
it was deep. I couldn't have.
Okay, Victor, let's allow him to go and prepare. There are the other guys in the room also. This is our cameraman here. Yeah. We have some guys who have come around in the room. They're taking photos. So thank you guys. Thank you. We'll see you later in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The chief architect is here. Okay.
Hello, yes, guys. Hello.
Yes, Bona Chief.
Hope everyone is well.
Hi.
Is enjoying the games.
How are you, Duke Bash?
Hello, yes.
Thank you for the arrangement.
Very fine, thank you, very fine. I hope everyone is enjoying the game, the live commentary and all that. Huh?
Yes, we are. And in fact, wondering what the feeling was like to see Rook to D2 land on the board.
Actually, this was everyone, even on the other groups, was talking about Mehul has won the first game. So I think Nguku is a very lucky guy. That's what I'd say for this first game.
Same here. We were so
lucky, resourceful.
Same lucky guy.
Resourceful is a word. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much, Duke, for being.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Yes.
Luck favors the brave. He came here very early in the morning, so he was ready for the bout. And he was very focused. So I think Mehul will go and scratch his head and come back with a now winning formula because he has to try to equalize the black pieces. That is going to be an uphill task to him going tomorrow. Let's say in case he'll be 1.5 point behind, it will be crazy. So we just wait to see what happens from 2 p.m. East African time. Thank you, guys. We'll see you later.
Maybe before you go, just one more question I'd like to ask on behalf of the viewers. A player was asking, are the games having an increment after the 40th move?
Sorry, come again. Guys are making a bit of noise. Okay, you're saying?
Is there increment on the time? The 90 minutes, does it have increment on the 40th?
Is there increment?
Yes, there's 90 minutes plus 30 seconds.
90 minutes plus 30 seconds increment per move. There is.
Is there another increment after the 40th move?
No, there's no other increment. That's all there is to finish the game.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So what time are we coming back for the next round?
2 p.m. 1400 hours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So see you in a while.
All right, thank you. Keep up the good work. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you too. So Bwanangani.
Yes, sir.
So here we are.
I'm glad I was alive to witness that one. I'm happy that I was there to witness that great swindle. It's an absolute amazing.
That is pure torture for Mehul now. I can assure you, he's so stressed now and he's gonna come back stronger. So at least 1-0 for Nguku. We didn't see that coming. That's chess, and that's how chess is, and chess is life. Life is not so predictable. And maybe just before we go off, because we'll just be giving a commercial break. If you have something to say, maybe we can just do that.
Yeah. I know I've been restraining her a bit, so
much better. Good. So thank you to our viewers. We'll just like to give a commercial break. We'll give some few slideshows of photos of Village Market and also Trademark Hotel. See you at 2 p.m. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to know about chess, kindly leave down below the comment. You can always find us on Facebook also. You can look for Terrian Chess Academy. You can also look for Prox Chess House. We have so many platforms we are going live. We also live on YouTube. We also have so much followership on WhatsApp, people who are following the game through the link. And we really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dr. Ngani. Without you, this event would not have happened. Looking forward to have you in round 2. And all those who are watching, kindly do come back for round 2. Let's see if Mehul will come back or if Nguku will continue with the sneaks and the comebacks. And thank you guys for watching us.
All right. Thank you, guys.